For that one. I did. Not yet. I'm talking about. Yeah, I know. What's your street? Just look up her emails. No, it's just half that. CAC, MAC, and AOL. And I'm sure Nikki has it because that's what I think. Got it. That's what that is.
Recording. Yeah.
Oh, that was.
Half day at 4.
Oh, good. It's right.
Oh, yes, I drew a smiley face also.
I see that.
Because I'm trying to get positive vibes.
It's kind of like a smirk.
Yeah, it's.
That's a representation again, right?
It's not symmetrical.
There's plastic on it.
Oh, fine, copy and reason.
Hi, everybody. Today is Wednesday, July 12th, and you are at the CROA Board Workshop. 5 o'clock. We have a time slot of 5 to 8, but I think we're all hoping this does not go that long. So anyway, Lauren, was the meeting properly noticed? It was properly noticed.
Nothing I was asking.
I'm sorry. And we do have a quorum. We're only missing one. That's Mr. Anderson. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a motion to adopt the agenda? Cheryl, second?
I would like to request to add something to the agenda.
Oh, I'll withdraw my motion. So
This is,
I got the agenda with
this is
my.
discussion. I'll have discussion
Okay.
first and then.
Nobody needs to second for discussion.
Then I'll second the discussion.
That you made the motion.
I made the
He
motion, he's gonna
motion.
second
I
for
second the
discussion.
motion for discussion.
Oh, okay.
What?
I want to ask that we can add to the committee member discussion today because we've heard from resident comments in the past 3 months that request to add more members. And we discussed at the last board meeting to add that as a topic for this meeting. Even as recently as last night at the dog park, we couldn't have the meeting because we didn't have quorum because there's a cap of only so many members. And so we didn't have enough members to hold the meeting last night. So
You can have a meeting when there's no quorum. Just can't vote on anything. Right?
so
Am
we
I
had the
wrong?
meeting, but we couldn't vote on it. That's correct, yes.
But you can still have the meeting.
Right. So on behalf of the residents who have asked for this for the past 3 meetings, I'd like to add that to the agenda tonight. It's not gonna be quick. I'd like to request it be the first topic so that it doesn't get pushed like it has on the last 2 agendas. So that's my request.
And we've already had this discussion. My preference was not to have any action items on the agenda because it is a workshop. And these things are probably going to take up a lot of time. The only reason these 2 things are on here is because after speaking with Lauren and Natalie, they said they were urgent. I've already promised Jim and Jared that we would address the dog park and address the committee for the covenants at our next meeting, which is 2 weeks. And it's, you know, I don't consider that urgent, but it's up to you guys. But anything else? Okay,
Do we vote?
all in favor of adding those 2 items to the agenda?
Which, a motion hasn't been made to add them.
A motion hasn't been made to add.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
Does
motion,
somebody want to make a motion to
I'll
add?
make a motion to add the discussion about committee members to the agenda as the first topic.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Is there any more discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Me?
I'm opposed.
Okay, that's 3-3. Motion
Did you
passed.
say aye or nay?
I'm opposed, yes.
That's 3-3, so the motion does not carry. Okay. So we're left with the original agenda.
we'll have to move to adopt.
Yep. Anybody? Move to adopt.
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Second? Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye.
I abstain.
Aye,
Are you an aye or a?
I'm a no.
Okay, you're a no.
Mhm. Strong no.
Okay. Opening remarks. That would be me. So if you're wondering why we're having this workshop, it's come very apparent to those of us that are sitting on the board that there's so many things coming up in the very near future that's going to require a lot of discussion. And 2 hours once a month isn't gonna cut it. So we decided that we would schedule monthly workshops. So you can, look for those dates coming up. If we don't need to have a workshop, then we've agreed that we're not gonna make up stuff to talk about just to have a workshop. So that's why we're here tonight. You'll notice that on the agenda, if you have a copy, it doesn't say anything about owner comments because we would like you to comment as we're discussing. But of course, in an orderly fashion, raise your hand, we'll recognize you, timed for 3 minutes as usual. But we figured it would be more beneficial, as things came up for us to discuss as a group. So you're welcome to do that.
I have a question.
Sure.
What's the process of that going to be? Just they raise their hand and
Yeah.
they're called on?
Yeah.
Okay,
Unless, I
just
tell
want to
them,
make sure, you know?
I thought I said that. I'm sorry if I didn't. I think that's better than, like forming a line or anything like that, because then you might be standing for God knows how long. But we'll try to watch who's first, to raise their hand and all that kind of good stuff. Okay. And again, I expect the next several workshops, because we have so many things coming down the pipe, to be just conversation only among the board, unless something urgent does come up that can't wait until the next meeting. Okay. So those are my opening remarks. We're going to start this meeting with a management report, because as I said, there's about a half a dozen things maybe that we really need to be some detail when Lauren brings us up to date, rather than the kind of fast and dirty that we normally get. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Lauren so she can explain what's been going on about several.
Yeah, so I'll start with the The playgrounds, obviously, they did not meet their deadline of June 30th. They came to us on the 29th with a proposal, an alternative proposal for the Spring Park Playground. That was discussed with the board on the following Monday. After that, we set up a executive session for next Thursday at 2:00. So that'll be noticed to the community tomorrow. That will be with Tom to discuss options, next steps, and how to move forward. So hopefully we can get things wrapped up quickly. They're still supposedly going to finish Long Meadow as they were originally planned. But we're not positive how Spring Park's gonna be completed. The website data
Well,
transfer,
wait, hang on a second. I have a question. When are they gonna take that big container away?
when they're done with the installs.
So are there things in there that go into Long Meadow?
Mhm.
So Long Meadow,
No,
Long
not
Meadow's
Park.
done. They're gone.
Yeah.
Okay, but there's things in there that.
That go in Spring Park,
At the
yeah.
Spring Park still,
Mhm. Yeah.
but they're not gonna be the ones doing it, or we don't know if they're gonna be the
We
ones
don't know.
We
completing
don't
it.
know. That's a board decision, and that's what we're gonna, part of what we're gonna discuss with Tom.
Is there a lot of stuff in it?
Yes.
Who owns it?
Phoenix Works.
But the product inside of it, we should own now, right?
Technically, yes.
Arguably, yes.
Arguably, yes.
So we probably, if
Because
we're
we paid
parting
half.
ways with them, we probably need to take the stuff out of their container and put it in our container. And then we could move
Mhm,
and then ask them to get their container off our street.
mhm.
But they're gonna want to get paid for it, and that needs to be figured out.
That's
Well,
why
I
we're
guess
having
that's
the
That's why we're
executive
having an
session.
exec session with Tom.
Well, but nothing should stop us from taking the equipment did we pay for that equipment or no?
You paid a down
50%.
We
payment.
paid 50%.
We can take half.
We paid
The deposit.
50%, I guess, part of that's labor, part of that's.
This is why we're discussing with Tom.
Do we have a container even for that, or would that be exposed to the
No.
elements? So
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't benefit us really to play that game.
can we, Cindy, would we be able to park on this for like 2 to 3 minutes and see if anyone has questions on
Of
the
course.
playground? Because I know it's been a contentious topic, so maybe in
Absolutely,
the audience.
absolutely. This is very, we've got plenty of time, so anytime anybody wants to say something, look at your hand on the TV there, or if there's somebody in the audience who has a comment or a concern or suggestion.
In the audience with playground questions, I know it's been coming up online. and-
I have a question that.
Sure. Come on up here.
Is there any way you could start
Name and address, sorry.
Katie Schultman, 1004 Periwinkle Court? I was wondering if there's any way you could start maybe looking for a backup contractor while you're waiting.
We've already done that.
Okay, that's great.
Anything else? Anything else about the playgrounds before we move on? Anybody on the board? Anything else? Okay. And that meeting, our executive session is next week, or
Next Thursday.
next Thursday. Okay.
Hey Cindy, just a quick question. Andrew, 1127 Mosaic Drive. For that session, can you or can Grand Matters provide a little bit history on what the true issue is so that the community has a better understanding of what you guys are dealing with or fighting through to try to get these completed? Because I know we're kind of left in the dark of they're just sitting there with limited work getting done, and there are efforts being done, but we may not necessarily understand what those are. So if you guys could share those with us in that meeting or sometime in the future.
Well,
That
executive
will be-
session is just the
Exec
board
session.
and the attorney. But Lauren, would you
Would
feel comfortable kind of giving a timeline? So we signed the contract and then the issues that we ran into?
We signed the contract. They ordered the playground equipment. It was during a time frame where it's taking longer than normal to get the playground equipment from overseas. When the equipment was finally delivered to them.
And that that took about how long? Remember?
Contract was signed in May last
It was
year.
at least 6
6
months.
Because
Okay,
it was in May and it was delivered right after Thanksgiving and right before Christmas.
okay. So it's a supply issue.
While they were waiting for the shipment, they should have received the engineering plans from the company that manufacturers playgrounds. They did not, and they were not on top of that. As that's part of the reason why the permitting was delayed, and they claimed they didn't realize that they needed permitting when the permitting was in the original bid, so we all knew permitting needed to be done. So permitting was delayed because they had already paid for the playground equipment, so they had no leverage to hurry up the engineer to get the drawings. Once they finally got that, they drug their feet in filing the permitting application and doing everything they needed to do there, even though Natalie and Brian were calling them daily.
And blamed the county.
And they were blaming the county on their slow movement. After they finally got their permitting, they had further delays. What we believe is they lost their foreman and lost some of their laborers. So
And
they
again, that was how many months in
So
between?
now we're into the February, March timeline of this year. So they should have started and been able to complete the project within a month. Obviously, that hasn't happened. They've had labor shortages. I think they took on too many projects than they can do. And Natalie has been calling them every day. Brian's been calling them every day. Brian meets with them whenever they're available to meet, to discuss and try to push them along. I've called them regularly. Roger's called them regularly. So, I mean, we finally did the demand letter at the end of May. They continued to kind of ignore the demand letter until about the end of, the last 2 weeks of June, and they started kicking things into a little bit higher gear. But obviously they needed to discuss Spring Park Playground with the turf needed, with the discovered concrete slab under there that was going to impact the amount of turf that was needed. They did not make themselves available to meet Brian until the 29th. Brian offered to cancel everything on his schedule to meet them, and they could not make themselves available till the 29th.
So the issue with the slab of concrete is there's very specific ground cover that's needed in a playground. They didn't know about that concrete. So when they uncovered it, when they started, doing all the moving of dirt and stuff like that, all of a sudden here's this concrete that they hadn't planned on, right? Is that?
Yeah, so the concrete slab is where we were planning on placing some sod and some benches for, families to sit and while the kids play on the playground. But obviously you can't place sod on a concrete slab. And we don't know what's under that concrete slab. There's very likely irrigation runs, electrical. So when you start breaking up that concrete slab, we're going to start breaking those pipes and those electrical lines. So it would be overall cheaper to extend the placement of artificial turf onto that concrete slab and cut down on the amount of sod that we're going to put in.
I have a question and a comment. So if they took possession of the equipment and paid for it in November, you may not have this answer now, but is that when the warranty started on it? So are we already going to be a year into the warranty on the equipment before we even take possession?
That I'll have to look at.
Okay, we should look at that. And I am not blaming any individual here, but I do think I appreciate that timeline. I think we need to start assigning project managers so that we have a singular person who's responsible for projects, because I don't know if there is an individual who's been responsible for this. I think everybody's kind of been tag teaming this. And yes, we did this in May and we did this in June, but this should have been, alarm should have been going off in December and January. So I think the accountability needs to lie with a specific project manager for everything we do that's over a certain dollar value. But I think that's something we need to look at as a board going forward.
Is that not something you're doing now? Don't you have someone who's managing each project and then other people step in if necessary?
Brian's generally the first
Brian's the first point of
point of
contact.
contact, and then if it gets
escalated,
escalated, it goes to Nat, and then after Nat. it
So
goes
that's
to
why
me.
there's multiple people. It starts off with Brian and then,
I don't find any excuse whatsoever that makes it acceptable that it's June of 2023 when we signed the contract in May of 2020. Like, this has come up as a hot issue because school is out and now the playgrounds aren't
right.
available.
Yeah.
But this should have come up as a hot issue in January.
I think the reason why, I'll just say it, it's, how many times has it showed up on the board agenda as a follow-up where the board is asking for updates? At a certain point, the board has to, I hate to say it, manage up really and continue to probe you and ask and get involved with it. But I mean, I don't want to put it on the board, but it is, honestly, it really is. It falls on the board because whether it be Lot D or other things that have come up along the way, 851, the day-to-day stuff, I think really needs some better care and attention because these things do slip through the cracks. So I think that's what we need to do.
I think we were on management's back about this playground constantly. And before you guys got on the board, we were constantly in touch with Lauren about what was going on, follow social media, playgrounds but there's only so much they can do if the company isn't going to come in and complete the work they're supposed to be completing.
Sure, but a demand letter could have been sent in January, not.
But it was only a couple of when did the equipment come in?
November.
So November, yeah, you have the holidays. Have the holidays, they were supposed to start. So what demand letter in January if they didn't start the work yet?
Jim has it.
Can we just commit as a board to more oversight on this and giving guidance to the management company earlier? And, maybe internally on the board decide what, how long is too long on specific projects. And, when it was to a very bad point, we were brought in and asked what we should do. But I think we need to be proactive with that and we need to kind of track it because there,
Yeah, but a lot of that is the responsibility of the day-to-day operations of grant managers. Like, we can't project manage everything. This is like the website where I said we need to set a completion date. This project doesn't have a completion date.
Which I believe is going to be changing going
Correct.
forward.
But also, when you go fast and fix stuff and you have the theater and you have Lot D and you have lawn sports and you have all this stuff and you're onboarding grant management, at some point, the bottom's going to fall out. And at some point, the board has to get involved and manage up and work with you and empower you to be able to do this. And we have to take an interest in that. And the go fast and fix stuff doesn't work. It's been documented that it doesn't work. So let's go slow and get it right.
That's right.
But to what Jared was saying, we've been on management's back about the playground. Every board meeting, she sends out notices.
There are 8 hours in a day. If you're doing theater and.
I'm not
Lot D and
talking
lawn
about
sports,
that.
and
Yeah.
I'm saying that.
Oh,
8 hours a day.
I hear you on that, but I'm talking about the playground. I hear you on that. I'm talking about the playground. She's been upfront with the board on every step with this company. In fact, I ran into the guy and he's got all these excuses outside the diner. I says, I don't even want to hear your excuses. They've been on it, but you can't squeeze water out of a stone.
And we
They've been
literally can't
trying
hold a
and
gun to
trying
them
and
and be
trying.
like, install this equipment. Yes, a demand letter could have been sent a little bit earlier. I'm in agreement, but there's only so much we can hold their hands to the fire and be like, do
A couple of thoughts. One is sometimes in the course of things, you just end up with a really bad contractor. And sometimes you end up gritting your teeth and because you're too far in to get out, sometimes you find a way around it to make it happen. But going forward and separate from this particular problem, I don't remember seeing anything about damages for contracts coming in late. As far as project management, you guys are a management company first and foremost. And I like the idea of CERTA for 851 because they're a construction project management company. And having third parties do it, one means it's somebody's job to make this all happen. Also, it's construction. You can't do it all the time. On big projects, you can justify it. Smaller projects, not. But then you have another layer of liability because you've got their insurances if a project comes out wrong. And I would just think that maybe we set up some sort of guideline as to when we're going to use third-party project managers. Because it puts a responsibility on somebody whose full-time job is to make that sort of project come to fruition.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, but didn't we get burnt? Isn't that part of the problem with the townhomes that we had before? They had a project manager and it turned out they were sending people every day that were this before your time. Celia, do you remember? That they had like a foreman going out there every single day.
That was
And-
part of the roofing litigation.
Yeah. that was
Exactly.
something
And I mean,
that-
that's a problem we've already run into. So then we owned, we said we want somebody there watching. So they send one of their more expensive
Yeah.
guys there every day to watch, which just brought the bill up. So yeah, that's.
What I meant by
we gotta be
damages was,
careful.
on really big projects, we've always had some language in where they have to pay us for every day
Correct.
they miss. Now, there's some caveats in there. There's a hurricane, those days don't count, that kind of stuff. And again, it's not applicable for small projects. And we don't want to scare people away if we make it too heavy a lift for them to bid on our work. It's just on certain instances, it might be something we do, but certainly having a completion date. But again, if we had a completion date here, what's our recourse? He missed it, he blew right by it.
Yeah, and you don't care.
Well, but even, I mean, I said before, I'm not blaming anyone specifically, but even us as a group here, we had a legal notice to complete for June 30th. We're not taking action on that until July 20th. We lost 3 weeks just waiting to have a discussion about it. Like,
We are having an executive session next Thursday.
which is 3 weeks later
That's the
than it
20th.
should have been.
I know it's the 20th, but she had to get a schedule together for us to all be able to attend this
Okay.
meeting.
Yeah,
I
understand.
think what Jared's saying is if, the demand letter goes out, then we should at least ask us, to pencil in this date that's closer to that date. So we can move on it immediately if they don't.
And that's not
Respond
your
to
fault
the-
either, because we had to do that to
Yeah.
what Cindy's saying. But we need, again, I keep saying we need a project. Someone needs to be responsible. Someone has to be accountable and responsible, either one of us or a grant manager staff person, and that's for everything that we do.
I just think a lot of the conversation that we've had sounds like we're making excuses for management. These things happen, I understand it, but if these things happen, we have to have a plan to make sure they don't happen again. So I think that's what we should focus on instead of explaining why we got here. We're here, right?
And me and
Yeah.
Lauren have been working on that. We're creating a contract with the verbiage. We're gonna
Yep.
run it past Tom. We're already working on it.
Yeah,
Learned our
yeah,
lesson, so we are moving forward. and-
absolutely. That's what I think.
That's
That's
what
if I
I'm
was a
hearing.
resident, what I would want to hear, right?
Yeah.
We made a mistake. We can't go back and change that, but here's how we're going to address these things going forward so that some of these things won't happen.
But I also think, again, you're giving a management update in passing, you're spending 10 seconds on the parks or on the playgrounds. We need to really have true discussion about that and get in front of some of these things before we get to the demand letter point. We need to know,
Yeah.
do we need to jump in and help? Can Grand Manners leverage any of your expertise at a senior leadership level? Is there something that where you could jump in? It sounds like you've been doing it too. And I assume there's some consequences from the Grand Manners side also for Phoenix Works. I assume, this will not be a preferred contractor.
Well, we've cut them off.
Okay, good.
They came recommended though, too, didn't they?
Mhm.
Yeah, I've known this, well, I knew Kevin for like 15 years. Kevin partnered with this new GC who I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just trusted Kevin.
Yeah.
And he started off great. And then
Well, and then we can, if we have a project and they say, we get a bid and they say we can, we tell them we want this done in 90 days. Then we could at some point also say, if it's a 3-step project, then this first step will be completed by whom?
Mhm.
And the second step will be completed by whom? The third step, it'll be all
That's
done by.
exactly what I'm
whom?
doing with Deerwood's Park
Okay,
with
that's-
Ryan.
Okay, so
We have
make sure.
some audience.
Um,
President.
okay, so who was first?
Who recommended this contractor?
Sounds like Roger.
I did.
And did we look at others?
Yeah, you guys looked at one other contractor.
There
for
was
the
2 other
playgrounds.
bids we had for the playgrounds, but they were substantially like double the price.
You also
Oh.
said it was a bid, not not a full proposal.
Mhm.
It was literally UOX. Yeah, it was a quote, so there's no consequences or
But we did receive 2 other bids from 2 other companies.
And it came in exactly last year while we were moving, what's that saying? Fast,
Go fast
go
and fix
fast
things.
and fix things.
Yeah. Shelley?
Shelley Reiki, 1121 Indigo. I'd just like to know how much have we paid them? And will we recoup that money?
That's part of what we're talking to Tom about. They were given a 50% deposit on both playground.
But we don't know how much that 50%
Off the top of my head, I
and
don't.
get it back.
No,
The
that's a
community
tough
would get it back.
That's a tough question.
And in the future, can we suggest that we have an RFP committee? I know that there are people on social media that have already reached out and want to do that. If we set up an RFP committee with projects over X amount of dollars, we can have a group of people vetting that RFP, making sure that we have contractors from all over, not just ones that work in Celebration. And have a selective group that is bigger than 1 or 2 people bidding on a project, which is completely different than having an RFP for a project.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
So procurement, I think overall, I would say is a major pain point, and I think we're learning that as we kind of see some of the bids, shade structures, honestly, and to a certain extent, the market may be thin. But also, we don't need to RFP everything, right? I mean, we're gonna scare people away at a certain point, so we do want to make it easy to do business, but
But if
to your
it's
point,
over $20,000,
Spot
if it's
on.
over 25,000,
Spot on.
like things could be brought to a resident committee of 7 people.
Yep.
Would be my recommendation as always.
Yep.
And I know that there have been 3 people on social media that have already requested it, that have already asked to give their time.
I think end-to-end
Keeping in
procurement
mind that all of
is
those are
something we need to
volunteer.
look at.
Lauren, the information's not confidential, correct? The figures?
No.
Okay, so-
You approve?
Yeah.
Well, I just happen to have it here because I carry this with me every time I go to the playground to find the owner to shove this in his face. So I'm on it too, just like the residents are. They're very frustrated. So the playground structure and then individual play items, this is just for Spring Park, $113,300.
So it's
The-
likely more than that.
Okay, Jim, let me, yeah. Because this is where his lies come into play. Eventually it catches up with him. Engineered drawings for permit, $1,200. I think they said they didn't know they had to do that. It's on here. Freight cost, $9,050. Installation of equipment, $32,500. Dumpster fee, $1,500. Safety surfacing, that's 3 to 4 inch drain rock at 4,800 square feet area, $7,200. Artificial turf with safety padding, $62,400. Total surfacing would add up to $69,600. Permitting fees, which they knew they had to get permitting fees, is another $2,500. So the total cost of this, I think, was, we'll have it all added up, $162,439.
This didn't go through RFP, correct?
No.
Went through bid.
Roughly
great.
based on
3
what
bids.
I was
And-
hearing, it's
And
about,
the.
$229,650 is what that playground is costing us.
Which
they
we were
got
told
a
not to go to
50%.
RFP, get the bids and move fast.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
but,
It's lessons learned.
right,
And-
and because,
I think we need to,
because we always use Phoenix Works for everything
Correct.
else, correct?
Correct.
I mean, the only
never
other
had a
really
problem.
thing they screwed up is the sidewalk where
Right.
the
The seal.
seal is.
But other than that, they completed over 100 something projects up to standards, up to par,
Yes.
and we're fine. So that's why we entrusted in this company, and I don't know where they felt.
So this contractor just didn't fall out of the sky. He worked in our community for a long time and did a lot of work for us.
we paid him 115,000 if we paid 50% roughly.
Was it just for the,
Whether.
what did
we'll
we-
get that back.
It was half of the total
half of the total?
estimate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thanks, Shelley.
Somebody else had their hand up?
I just had one quick question.
The microphone picks you up better here, Hunt, for the people that are.
Well, I don't know if it's, I'm just confused on one thing. The permit listed a different contractor.
It's a third party subcontractor.
Okay, and are they being held accountable to you?
They were part of the demand.
Lauren, I'm sorry, what did you say?
They were part of the demand.
We can't hear you.
Speak out. They were part of the demand.
I didn't want to say, but
They were a sub.
Yeah, so maybe to put a bow on all this, I think this is a case study for what not to do going forward
Yep.
for procurement, and probably a good opportunity for us to talk procurement at some point at a higher level, and for us to continue to stay connected on topics like this.
You have another comment?
Oh, sorry, didn't see the hands. Come on up.
Carol George, 114 Parlor. I have a question and then I guess a comment. On a project of this size, are there performance bonds or are there items that need to be completed by XY date? You know, on a bigger project,
But you can't.
road work, those kinds of things, there's performance bonds. If you don't meet these deadlines, then you're going to pay a penalty.
The problem is there weren't deadlines set originally.
So where are the penalties? There were none. So have we learned a lesson?
Yeah.
Oh, that's what we're just saying.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of
Okay.
lessons.
Because you would think that there would have been markers that we need the permits in 30 days. We need this in so many days. We need that.
There
You know,
was, there
And there
was,
should have been penalties levied
Mhm.
if those dates weren't met. If those
Yeah.
milestones weren't kept.
Understood. Yeah.
So with these new documents, I mean, I would like to see that as you're.
there wasn't a contract executed to talk about all of that. It was signed off by our ex-president and we
Oh,
continued
this
to
was
move
pushed.
forward.
Oh,
It was pushed.
well, he was busy focusing on the theater, so say no more,
Okay.
but
Uh,
just,
No, I think also payments can be set up the same way.
Yeah.
Right, with
Yeah.
dates,
Mhm.
and so
So,
you have percentage of.
yeah. So I'm thinking not much expectation has been met on this, and if we gave them 50% and the equipment itself was far less than 50% of the total, I would think that technically we own the equipment. That's the only thing of significance
Would
that
have
we
done
have
some
to show for
installation.
things. But if we don't have anything in writing, any kind of contract item, I don't know where that stands in a court of law.
There's
I
standard,
guess that's
there's
what our
standard.
meeting next week will determine.
Okay. Give them hell. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions about this? Let Lauren move on to the next item.
The website, they're starting the data migration today, so we're putting a content upload freeze on the website. The only thing that'll be updated is the meeting information page. We won't be adding any additional information to the website. They have 2 weeks to complete.
So that by the July board meeting.
Or they don't get paid.
Correct.
Right.
Yep,
Yeah,
exactly
true.
2 weeks.
Yes, it is estimated to be,
Yes.
projected to be complete by then.
Correct. That's good. I have a request. Would they put the meetings in chronological order?
Not to Liz.
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Is she the one that manages
Well,
that kind of
no,
stuff?
it's Amber B, but I'll talk to Liz and she can.
Okay, yeah, because I was looking for something today and I was like, oh, wait a minute. It's after the 26th, but you know. Thank you. So we should see that in 2 weeks.
You should see it in 2 weeks, yeah.
Yay.
Then we'll close down the old site. The new one will go live. It won't look substantially different, but the back end has been completely rebuilt. So you have all new coding, all new plugins that are fully supported and will be updated by Freshly sites regularly. So we won't have the same issues that we had with our old website where it just became decrepit and old and it was not secure.
So basically it got so old, it wasn't functional
Well,
anymore.
you didn't have anybody actively supporting the site. It was just fixed as you were paying somebody on an ad hoc basis to fix as needed.
Lipstick on
Yes,
pink.
For instance, one of the crises around it was that they upgraded without telling us over a weekend, and that's what created one of the problems. So not the vendor we wanted to stay with, for sure. So just to be clear, in terms of the documents being updated, we're talking about,
Everything under the community governance tab is what's being migrated.
so, are we gonna have, committee agendas, committee minutes?
Yep.
Okay. And we're gonna have all the agendas and the recordings that we have.
If it's a drop down under the community governance tab, that will all be migrated over. And that's the bulk of your documents. You have some in Parks and Rec and in other areas, but
So theoretically, no more 404s. We can't. find stuff.
theoretically,
Thank you.
there will be the odd one that we will be able
Let's
to.
just say,
fix.
what's
Yeah.
404, and then I remember.
Yeah,
the
4,700 documents. We might miss a couple, but
Yeah.
So I just want to reiterate for everyone in the community, the website is not going to look different. That's the thing. It will be a new website, but it's going to look the same, just everything will work. That's the key
everything
thing
is current.
here. Yes.
That was one of their problems.
What, in terms of retention, we'll save those documents somewhere behind the scenes if we need them for historical reference or whatnot. If they're not on the website, like where are we?
So keep them on our.
They're all stored locally.
Sort of.
Yeah,
Packed up on the cloud.
yes.
So you should be, if there's any missing, then
We
are you
have
gonna,
it, we have it locally and we will upload.
I mean, but so is someone going to be doing that, kind of looking through the minutes, say, okay, wait a minute, these minutes are missing or whatever? Or is it gonna be, or would you like, if somebody goes and they're looking for something to tell you, hey, this isn't there, and what, or?
Yes to both.
Okay, gotcha.
Do we have a document retention policy? Like, how does that work? Is that,
Your retention policy is based on 720.
it is, so use that. out of
Is that the
curiosity.
only thing
It's
left?
7 for some, 5 for others, 3 and 1.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And there's a couple in perpetuity, which are like your governing documents.
Right, okay, thank you.
Any questions, audience, PD, anybody? Okay, next topic, Lauren.
Owner. It is in testing now with the tech committee.
You want to explain what that is
Oh, so
before you go much further?
ONR is a application for community associations that provides a bit of a social media piece, a communications piece, a maintenance reporting piece that is linked with Google Maps. So there it geotags wherever you're doing. You can upload videos, upload photos. We can create separate groups. We've actually created separate groups for some of the service areas to test this out as a means of communicating with them and for them to communicate amongst themselves.
So facility management,
Facility
facility
management,
scheduling, right?
It will allow for residents to book amenities, like book one of the tennis courts if you see that it's not being used. As part of that rollout piece, we will be working with the tech committee on kiosks at the reservable amenity areas. It will likely be the tennis courts, the basketball courts, the volleyball courts, and possibly a couple others.
So if somebody shows up just to play, they can look at that kiosk and say, oh, Charles has this reserved already, he's got first dibs.
Show up.
Then you can use it.
Trying to create revenue. I see. Is that baked into our budget? Like, how do we?
Yeah, it's in your budget.
It is, okay.
It's $5,000 a year. It's less than teleservice.
It
And
was
what
put
about-
in as a replacement for what we're currently using for scheduling for the.
Yeah.
amenities.
It's
So a
replacing the
replacement
Parks and
for
Rec
Rec
system, Rec Pro, because it's extremely outdated.
But it also has a component that would replace teleserve as well, right?
It could, if that's the way the board decides to go, if you don't go with GoGov. It does provide that as an option.
So GoGov, as we start getting into like GoGov versus Teleservice versus ONR, there are going to be redundancies where we'll need to sit down and map out and
Mhm.
technology too.
Another workshop.
Yeah, no, technology's working. Technology, that was discussed at the last technology meeting. We started talking about that. We started talking about the back-end experience, obviously, because that's kind of been what's lacking. Make sure that we make it as easy as possible for residents. So ONR, if it could handle everything, if we have one app that handled everything, I think that's better for residents.
And we don't want to spend multiple lots of money for multiple redundant experiences.
Right. I mean, teleservice right now is $9,000 a year. Rec Pro is almost $5,000 a year, but very antiquated. So if you combine those two usages in one for just $5,000, obviously you're saving.
And GoGov CDD, I think, said what they were gonna put the bill for the first year.
For the first couple of years, they're giving you a $20,000 credit.
$10,000 credit.
But then we would have to link on with them.
Correct.
With O and R, we would be just us.
Yeah, but it doesn't fit our financials.
Yeah, however, from a resident standpoint, they'd have to figure out ahead of time whether CCDD does it or whether we do it. And that's one of the things that we talked about. I was at the last meeting with about 3 people from the tech committee meeting, implementation meeting for GoGov. And so we kind of talked through that, but there weren't any answers that came out of it. But those are all the things that the technology committee is looking at as well, and working with CCDD as they're implementing it for themselves, talking about how we could partner. It's, I believe, $16,000 a year. So depending on who signs on it, it will depend how much each of us pays. My guess is that a certain person doesn't want CROA to pay 25%. And so I don't, not you,
Oh, okay.
not you. This Paige, if you're listening, I know you want that because we talked about it. So, and they have very few incidents. So it depends how that's split up, what our cost is going to be. But yeah, they did create a little bit over a $20,000 credit.
So in case anybody's wondering, I want to clarify something. In case there's anybody sitting out there thinking, boy, what a deal. They're giving us a credit for the first year. That's because they've never paid for cell service the whole time we've had it. And that was here when I was working here. So that's a good, probably close to 15 years, I'm thinking.
20,000,
That-
still 20,000.
Um,
It's still 20,000.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not like we're really getting it. I mean, exactly.
Yeah.
You know, we've been putting the bill for the last 15 years.
So
Yeah, and it has-
Decision on O and R gross versus GoGo, the board, correct?
Well, the board, but also if we're using owner for CROA, then it's also a CJC decision. So then it would be a CJC as the final decision maker. We can, if we don't use ONR for maintenance and facilities purposes, we would still like to use it internally as a rec pro replacement and a way of communicating with residents, especially as it impacts the service areas.
Yeah, obviously, as usual, the committee would make a recommendation to us and hopefully be available for us for any questions regarding their research on that.
Anybody else? Okay, next.
Finally, the 851 building. I talked to Jim Riley from CERTA. He's back from vacation. He has a couple items to check in with Mark from TCC about. So we can hopefully expect something next week. As soon as we receive that, well, actually, I can start scheduling a town hall with you guys.
Mark's out of the office starting tomorrow until I think next Monday or Tuesday.
So hopefully he's connected with him today. So we're supposed to have something by next week. And then we'll schedule a town hall to discuss options.
In case you're wondering, one of the reasons that they have this Mark Jones involved in this is because when we got the initial quote from them, it was to finish off the build, make the building look exactly as it looked before. It was my understanding, and Jared and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, that they can make changes to the outside of the building, both in the materials that are used and the way it looks. For instance, those louvered awnings aren't necessarily the best thing to have because there's holes and then water seeps there and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, maybe they'll go away, maybe they'll bring another different kind of awning that may cost less, you know, but still serve the purpose of shielding the sun from the office buildings and stuff like that. That's what we're kind of waiting for them to say, we've looked at this, Mark says we can do this.
Yeah, we got TCC involved up front, so we weren't going down a path and then getting denied in terms of their approvals.
Mark. I think
Just-
everybody knows that TCC is
I
a
just
corporation company. Yeah.
This is a panel system. There's all these panels run outside and they just hang there. It's the way it was built then. We're going to replace it with a similar system, which is 25 years improved. But panels could be looking different, and depending on which panel we put out there, we could have savings. So if we have to reproduce it the way the building looks now, it's gonna have one cost. We may have an effective wall system where the exterior looks a little different. And these metal awnings they leak and they're also expensive. So if we can get permission to do something a little more modest, instead of a big thing, have a little thing that just captures the sun, moves the water away. Again, it has a cost. So if we can get buy-in on those things, or at least know what TCC's requirements are, we'll be able to come up with a better and tighter cost.
Bill and Jared, do we have like a kind of a rough and dirty time frame? Anything for getting this at least civil? Did they give anything at this?
What do you
point?
think, the
This
building?
this building, 851. Is there anything right now?
I have no schedule.
No scale. Okay, I'm just curious. I know we haven't got our RFP, but time horizon wise.
In terms of savings, obviously, we want to look for savings. The actual things that are part of putting in the new walls, that makes up about 2/3 to 3/4 of the total amount.
Based on what Mark was saying, there were no specific design guidelines established for this building in the creation of Celebration. So that's why I felt it was best to just have Mark and Jim work directly together. So we weren't heading down the wrong path from the get-go.
There's a question in the audience. Come on down.
Are there still, whatever's in place to make this the community center, or is that part of the discussion tonight?
That's going to be part of the town hall, I believe. Right?
So there are still discussions about making the 851.
Because we'll be talking, we're going to be talking
Part of
about.
the master plan.
I don't want to speak out of turn, yeah.
No, I'm looking at you because because that was my thought, that before we can agree on what's going to be done with this building, we need some input as to what the community wants to
Karen,
do.
what do you want to comment on that too? Yeah.
Yes,
I see you really jumping.
Yes.
Yes.
yeah, it's part of the, you said town hall, that threw me off. I don't
Oh.
know what you're referring to specifically.
Oh, this building is called town hall, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's part of the master plan, what everyone said.
Yeah, I think
It's not gonna be fixed the way it is currently,
TBD.
potentially.
If that's what all of Celebration wants, it may be.
Right.
It may be,
It's
but
what the recommendations are of, that's what we're discussing tonight.
but we're not
To be able to
moving
discuss.
forward with that today.
Right, and
Correct, no.
There have been some people that have said at that cost, would you look at completely replacing the building? And that will be part of the discussion as well with the residents.
And I think too, the master plan, so community center is part of the master plan track, right? So whatever we discuss under the 851 is going to have to inform the master plan discuss. So there's going to have to be some.
Synergy.
Thank you.
Yes.
That's exactly where I was going. Thank you.
Um,
Thank you.
Andrew's had his hand up online.
Hi, Andrew. Go ahead.
Well, yeah, just want to add, I hope we're not doing any serious work on 851 until the soccer field bids come through, as well as, since we don't know what we want to do with 851, we should try to mitigate and minimize cost associated with that building until we know whether it's going to be a repair job or a tear down and build new, and possibly through getting a mortgage to finance it. So, if something needs to be done that is really going to jeopardize the structural integrity of the building, then I guess we might just have to bite the bullet and do it. But, things on the outside, if there really isn't anything that TCC required us to do, then I would say we could live without them and move on. And they haven't had it in their relationship to do anything. So more of just try to keep costs down on the 851 until the community, the board, Grand Manors all have a plan on what we're doing with that building and location.
Hey, Andrew. So I think and these are all really great points. I think with the soccer field, and I think as you start thinking of soccer field and 851 and community center and pickleball, if you look, and I don't want to like distract too much as we start getting into the master plan discussions, but if you start looking at the Lowe study and the Jeffrey Mountain study, it's all done over a multi-year period. So, we'll sit down and we're going to, as we work through the resolutions, build those guidelines and ultimately the committee or whatever form that takes will hopefully, look at those and give us some good recommendations. But community center, I think when you look at those, it's always been kind of a long term.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah, I mean, it's
But
something.
remember
yeah.
that long-term was in 2015. This is already 2023. Just off the top, my thought is it would be a shame not to do something with this building since it's such a big project.
Yeah.
You know, even if we just did the minimum, fill in the walls, redo the outside, patch that part of the roof over there, you know, just to come back in a couple of years or whatever. But that's for a later date.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, no major maintenance has been done on this building recently and no upgrades have been done on this building. The only new thing for this building is upgrading the Wi-Fi, so there's community Wi-Fi in here and that the networking works better. All things that would translate into whatever happens here.
Well, I think the best example for that is that when Lauren first came here, she was told, you know, hey, when it rains, your windows are gonna leak, but, you know, oh, well, you know, that they've been leaking for who knows how long. And nobody thought to go and caulk the windows or do whatever needs to be done to stop the leakage, which exacerbated things.
We
So
should,
you also have to understand that Andrew mentioned the soccer fields. If that bid comes in high, this building is a priority compared to that.
we should move on from this topic because it's not
Yeah, I
at
think we're,
all what we're
we're
talking about.
already making decisions around what we want to talk about. through
Okay,
the
so
master
I'm
plan.
gonna talk and finish talking about what I want to
Of course
say,
you are.
and that's it.
Go ahead.
Wait, are we not following an agenda that we adopted?
Well, yeah, but she's on, but this is the last point. I think, but we're just talking in general, but we're gonna have a town hall meeting. It's gonna be
Right.
discussed. It's gonna be part of the master plan.
Exactly.
So it's gonna be tough to make all these things fit together with all the moving parts.
But if I'm gonna say something, I'm gonna say something, and I don't need to be shut down.
I'm not shutting you down.
No,
I'm
no,
trying to
you're saying
keep us
you
on
want
agenda.
to.
That's our job as a board is to
Right.
stay on task.
And I will talk if I want.
Oh,
Can we-
anybody else in the audience?
Celia's rules of order. Okay.
What'd you say?
Let's move
Okay,
forward.
is that the
Action items.
Is that the last? Is that the last?
That's
thing?
it, yeah.
Okay. So that's the last project update that we have. Okay, so we'll move on to the two action items. They want to, there's only two. One is the motion to approve replacement of the LED bulbs at the fields.
I'll motion for discussion because I gotta point it out again. So 1 second.
I'll second for discussion.
Are they replacing are they doing the labor for this?
Yes.
Okay, that's not on this end. This is a materials only quote and has no labor. It also has payment terms of net 20. So I motion to not accept this proposal as it is. We need to pay attention to this stuff. And I bring this up every meeting with a different contract and they continue to show it. So I motion to not accept this contract as it's written, or this quote as it's written.
One question, is this not capital? These are existing?
Correct.
Yeah.
We're not improved, okay.
I wonder how much that would add to it. But that makes a difference.
With the labor,
It's
it's included in that number. It's just not,
just, it's included in the number.
it's just not in there. Bid.
Yeah, I think what Jared's referring to, correct me if I'm wrong, is.
No, I
Same thing.
Yeah.
I understand
Yeah,
it.
but-
Management
That's not what I
proposal says it's included. Well, no. If we are in
Correct.
court and we're looking at this document, it's not included.
Again, it's what we talked about with the playgrounds,
Breaking
right?
down.
We want to tighten things up. And so
Break
same
down
thing
all
that
the-
happened with uploading the documents. It wasn't that we didn't want to do it. It was that we wanted to have a better paper trail of what they were committing to.
It can be $0. They just are not obligated to do the labor based on what we're paying them.
If we,
Based upon what they presented us, right? The quote.
Correct.
so if we table this until you come back with a labor quote on a criticality scale, can this wait until the next?
It can wait 2 weeks. They've been out for 6 months. It's been taking this long just to get people to come out and bid.
Seriously?
Yeah.
When did we authorize you to, I mean, has this been on our radars at all for the last 6 months?
6 months.
We
May not.
requested Michael's Lighting to come out. We requested another company to come out. We finally asked Musco because they installed them to come out.
They're the
And
manufacturer.
they're the manufacturer. So
So I would did you second Jared's motion?
I did.
Okay, so, yeah, okay.
Or I did it for, oh, no, not, did you make a motion again?
Motion to table, because I motioned to not accept it. I motioned to table.
I have a question. Wouldn't this disconnect
There's a
panel
motion.
assembly have something to do with labor that's on here or no?
No, that's just the
So
bond.
Jared has a motion to table.
I second the motion.
So we're gonna table this until
We'll
hopefully
need to
just 2 weeks.
vote to table it.
Table? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay. Next one, motion to approve purchase of 4 batteries for 4-seater Nev by Orlando Dodge Chrysler.
I'll motion to approve this proposal that tells us what we're doing and that labor's included.
I'll second.
There was a
Any
comment in the,
discussion?
there was a comment in the audience. What was that?
It says 2 batteries, but I believe it was just read as 4 batteries.
For 2 batteries for a 4-seater Nev.
Oh, I
Good question. Come on.
I do have a question. Having owned one of those, 2 batteries is not all the batteries usually.
It's 4 batteries.
Okay, so it says
The proposal has 4 batteries listed.
It's two
I said,
the
batteries per
motion
now.
is to approve the purchase of 2 batteries.
So
Per nav.
you have 4 batteries. for
Four
one
are 4-seater
four-seater.
Nev.
It should have been 4.
Each NEV needs 4 batteries to run.
Is that gonna affect the price?
No, the quote.
The quote says 4.
Yeah, I think this is a misprint, but
Correct.
it needs clarification.
Thank you for that.
So
Yeah.
since we adopted the agenda, do we need to?
Just verbalize the motion.
Well, we have a motion. So Jared has the motion to approve. So he needs to withdraw his motion and amend.
And Celia needs to withdraw her second.
So will you amend to,
Do you want to amend or withdraw?
or amend or withdraw?
I'll withdraw.
All right. So can you read me? What do we need to? I'll make
Motion
the
to approve the purchase of 4 batteries for a 4-seater Nev by Orlando Dodge Chrysler Jeep Ram in the amount of $3,085.43 for reserves.
Okay, and we need to amend that to,
That is the amended.
okay, so I
That's,
will,
hold it.
so
That's what I just read. Purchase the 4 batteries for a 4-seater Nev.
Right.
But that's not what the printed sheet says.
I think the one that was printed out was not the one that was sent to you all.
Oh,
posted on the
okay, there's 2
website.
different agendas.
It's the one that was printed out.
this is a,
Okay.
That's fine.
Okay, so that right here.
Oh, sorry, we're all reading something different.
so your motion should stand because we have the correct one.
We have.
Yeah,
We're reading from the correct.
It's just the one that was printed out for the public was not the altered one. that was sent.
So I motion to accept the proposal.
Can we put that page up for the audience to see?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'll second Jared's motion.
I second it.
Oh, you, okay.
Yeah.
Julia seconded.
Which, Haley, I'll talk to you while she's doing that. It would help me a great deal is if anytime you change an agenda for any meeting, if you would put like a revised date on it someplace.
Okay.
Because I was going through my papers today, trying to sort through things and I'd have like 3 different copies of the agenda for the same meeting and I couldn't tell which was the.
Revised date and time.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we update it multiple times in a day.
Yeah.
As things come in
Mhm.
and go.
It happens, it happens.
But at least that way I know which one is the latest one.
I'm
Okay.
glad we were all equally.
Yeah, this is coming from the reserves correctly, correct?
Just gonna put that,
I was asking management.
We have a-
Yes.
We have a motion from
Yes,
Jared
thank
and
you.
a second from Celia.
well, but she's,
Oh,
they asked that she
I know.
put that up.
Discussion or vote?
So we have to vote?
We're waiting for her to put,
Oh,
Jim
yes.
asked that she put that up.
Can we still call the vote without that? I mean, I don't.
If you guys want, yeah,
I don't know.
there it is.
I was saying the actual correct sheet.
The action item, just so that
Yeah.
everybody, so it's on record of what the action is. There,
Thanks.
okay.
Okay. All right. So we have a motion from Jared and a second by Celia to buy 4 batteries for the 4-seater Nev. All in favor? Anybody opposed? No? Okay. That's unanimous. Okay. Now we're getting to our, oh, you know what? I am sorry. Now, before we get into the discussion items, Gary, did you still want us to, she handed this to me and I just flew right past. You still want to say something or you want to wait until we get to?
Wait until you start discussing.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so next thing, the first thing we're gonna do, the first thing we're gonna discuss is evaluations of the management company. Our contract with Grand Manners is up November of next year, correct? Yep.
Renewal.
Renewal, right. 3-year first renewal date. We started doing this about a year ago and then stuff hit the fan. So it kind of ground to a halt. Then it was again during everything that was happening. So we decided that it was time to do that. So Charles and I had for like 2.5 hours just batting this around. So on the agenda, it's a prepared template as is. We were sent a template that basically reiterated everything that was part of the RFP that went to Grand Manners as a suggestion for a template to be used as a rating system. It's 21 pages long. I was thinking that maybe that's just a little bit too much detail, and there's a lot of things on there that cannot be measured. So then we talked about, well, there are 10 categories on this, which is the next sample I send out to you folks. Did we want to just condense it to the topics that are part of this 21 pages? Yeah, the sections, and then use the original template kind of as information, like what you should be thinking about as you rate, in that category. It gave a sample of that. And then, I'm sorry. The second idea I had was to go through and delete anything or combine things from this. Let me start again because everybody's going to get confused. Okay. The first one was the 21-page document as is. The second one is that we would go by line and either, throw things out or, whatever. That's the second one. The third option would be to just take the headings, which is things like general operating support, personnel and staffing, finance, accounting, cash management, and then use the 21-page document as a reference, to guide through what you should be thinking about as you're rating on this. And then the fourth one is basically the same thing, but we added also a section to rate the functions and not the people, the functions, like of all the departments in the management company. So accounting, client services, communications, community standards, blah, blah, blah. So, and this is just the starting point. I don't, maybe you don't like these categories here. We can talk about it. Maybe you don't like the rating system. We can talk about it. But I do think that we need to, make some decisions so we can get this moving sooner rather than later. So it's up for grabs.
Yeah, can I piggyback off that? Just very, very quickly. So I think to your point, there's no pride of authorship. And we want this to really, Cindy and I just wanted to get together and kind of flesh out at a ridiculously high level, like, why are we doing this? What do we have? What are we evaluating? But ultimately, it's the 7 of us who need to sort this out. And I think at a higher level, and I guess we need to make a motion to discuss this, so I don't want to do too much, but really what.
I'll motion to discuss.
Thank you. Let me stop there.
Do we have to do that with that
No,
items?
just
we don't.
Discussion. No, that's it.
Oh, then never mind. Then
Yeah.
carry on.
Well, and then I think then maybe at the end of the discussion, I'll make some notes. I'll put together what I believe I heard.
Yeah.
And then send it out and then we can vote on it.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
So just to be clear, to people listening that aren't on the board, this is just for the board to do, or is this something?
This part.
So
Yeah.
This
Yeah, I
part
don't,
is
yeah, I
what the
don't,
board will work
Yeah,
on.
I'm not sure that was clear, so I wanted to make it clear to everyone.
Oh, yeah.
in the audience.
yeah, so I think we need to talk, and I'll kick it off and maybe we can all go around or whatnot. Gary, I'm going to use your name because I know you brought it to our attention that we haven't done this before. Cindy, you mentioned that, and it's been tabled for the longest time. Obviously, as we start going into a renewal, we need to discussions. We need to have objective conversations around how are you doing, where can you improve, what are you doing well. The statement of work seems to be a great way to at least start that process. my 2 cents, and from what I've seen, I don't know if that's something to a T that we need to follow every single I and T. I think it's the spirit of it. We should be looking at that, but the RFP was also done at a different point in time. And it's not necessarily indicative of everything that we're dealing with as an HOA today. So I think to borrow from that, start building from that, massage it, get what we need, make it work, obviously, based on kind of where we are, is important. But then I also think if you look at kind of the 360-degree feedback, we need to engage the residents. We need to go out, we need to get feedback. Obviously, we hear a lot on social media. We hear a lot, you know, just from talking to Lauren and Natalie. We need to figure out as a board, how do we bring in the resident feedback, bring in the board feedback. I think part of what we were talking about is even Grand Manor's a self-evaluation too.
Yeah.
How do we reconcile those three? And how do we weigh these? And then how do we put action plans in place to, if necessary?
Yeah,
So,
this is the first piece of the puzzle. Then I also, if you read further down the agenda, then the next piece is a self-evaluation by Grand Manners, which we thought, because if you've ever worked in a big corporation or probably anywhere by this time, your boss does an evaluation of you, and then you do an evaluation of yourself, and then it's called gap analysis. You see,
That's what we do.
yeah, you see where there's big differences. Like you may think you're doing a great job in communications, but then when you look at what we said, it's like, well, just the average. So then that's how you start the discussion once you get to that point.
I do think, though, sorry to cut you off, I do think we need to be very careful about how we as a board weigh the evaluation, because we have different line of sight into Grand Manners. We work with you at a very different level than residents.
Exactly.
And I feel like we need to sit down and really figure out, like, how do we want to engage residents, and how do we want to weigh the feedback, and how do we want to collect the feedback in a way that's not going to be, just 1 through 5, right? You just, grade everything on a 1, but how do we make this open-ended? How do we get real, legitimate, objective feedback, and how do we actually capture that? How do we organize it, and how do we improve and report out to you? And again, how do we time this with the renewal so we can start having those conversations? We want to take Gary's question.
Oh, yeah, Gary.
Thank you.
Sure.
Gary Hotspeth, 1471 Roosevelt Street. First, I'll mention this evaluation was never meant to be a personnel evaluation. It is strictly functional. There's no names attached because the RFP, statement of work, and the contract is written on a functional scale. In fact, you'll find that the RFP in all its detail was turned into the contract, which was signed by the president of the CROA board and Grand Manners. So it's the same information. It's just organized differently by the lawyer. It's still the same. I don't recommend that you initiate a Grand Manners self-evaluation. That's something internal to the company. They should be doing that on their own. You shouldn't direct them to do that because that's internal. What you have a responsibility to do is an evaluation of the management company you hired. I know the list is long and detailed, but it is very specific. You owe it, I think, to the homeowners and yourselves to conduct a detailed listing. I don't know how many times I've sat in the audience over several years and listened to various boards talk about, gee, I wish we would have told the management company that we wanted that done differently. And it's always about specific items. For instance, just tonight, we talked about specific contract details, project management, whether it should be RFP or not. Those are all very specific. And I wouldn't want you to try to summarize that into headings. The worst case that could happen is if you as a board take and start lining out specific items, you run the risk of an implied bias. The residents are going to say, well, they wrote that one out because they want the evaluation to be oriented, more positive in that direction. So I wouldn't start chopping it down because you run the risk of that implied bias. Why did you select that to get rid of? I say, if you ask the RFP people to spend a year writing this, and then it got turned into the contract, which was signed, that level of detail, bite the bullet and do the homework this time and rate all those items. It's justifiable. And it's specific enough that you can give guidance to the management company rather than just an overarching category. Finally, I would like a third party to compile the results. That also gives an appearance of objectivity rather than the board compiling its own results. I'll
Thanks, Gary.
stand by for questions.
Thanks, Gary. He's right, except there's so many things on here that you cannot measure. And it just stuck in my mind because it's number 13 on page 13. And it has to do with the fact that anytime something is received by the front desk, they date stamp it. You know, how are we gonna rate them on that? You know, we don't know if they do it or not. I'm sure they do.
Yeah, but we made that part of the contract.
Well, but we can't, how can you evaluate somebody on something you can't measure? Like,
Well,
you
it's
can't see.
Take a
Example,
look.
full example.
Samples.
Well, that would be my preference.
I'll tell you.
What do the rest of you think?
I understand what you're saying, but the objectivity would be that this is, I would assume this is something, all these things are they're working on all the time, every day, because that's what the contract is for. So. I'm looking
Look at what
page 13, number 13.
Okay, yeah.
I mean, I guess the other option would be to say this is more fitting of feedback from the residents and move it over to there.
Well, they're not gonna know if they stamp it.
I also,
Yeah, they have the experience of working with the front
Well, but
desk.
that's, I know, but that's part of the resident. This is for us.
and also,
This part is for us.
yeah, I don't know if I buy the statement of work. I mean, you can look across industries and you look at things like Net Promoter Score, things like that, where you,
Translate.
that's like when you call a call center and after the call, it's like on a scale of 1 to 10. So there are different devices out there to get feedback. It's not necessarily, you're not pulling the contract and going line by line against the statement of work. I don't think that's practical necessarily. And
Stay on the line for 30 seconds and answer a short survey.
I think there are different ways to evaluate and look, we have a lot on our plate too with 851 and everything going on. I think there's a way to do this in an objective way and balancing what's in the statement of work, but coming up with something that makes sense. And again, making it a 360-degree feedback process because we do need to solicit resident feedback.
I raised my hand. I was.
Okay,
Yep.
no worries.
Isn't the document that you're talking about a job description, basically?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if I didn't do multiple items in my job description, you don't agree?
I don't think this is a job description.
Except it's contractual.
But it is, for layman's terms, a job description. And if I chose to not to do 10 items in my job description, my boss we would be having a conversation. Grand Manor should be internally evaluating themselves between managers and employees and their ladders and their things, because as a company, they want to succeed, whether they're in celebration or not. A customer service survey can be done with a 1 through 5 and comments so that you can see if you're getting a strong comment multiple times that this ball is being dropped. That's a problem. And it's a scope of work. So just like you talk about your contractor who is not doing their scope of work that they laid out, if you don't review that, you could be missing that the scope of work is not being done. Now, I will say, I've worked with Lauren and I've worked with Natalie, so please do not take offense to that because I think they are doing wonderful things. And as part of the Covenants Committee, when I was there, they took our suggestions, they turned them into action items. They made them better for the next meeting. So my input is they are doing great, but you ask somebody else who has a neighbor who is hoarding and who has tried to get their point across and no one's listening, that person's going to have a very different experience than I have as a committee member. All that being said, again, it's a scope of work. If you're asking for a contractor to live by theirs, they are a contractor. They need to live by theirs. And if that's what the RFP set out, that's what we should be following. Thank you.
Thanks, Shelley. So how do you feel about the 4 options that I laid out based on our discussion Charles and I had? Do you have a problem with, I mean, do you want to go through this line by line and delete things that you can't measure? Do you want to just look at have the headings to work from and then use this as a guide that these are the things that you should be considering when you rate on general operational support? Do you want different headings? Bill, you have your hand up?
Yes. And I have a history with this because I was on the RFP committee, but we did tell them this is what we wanted. So we should use as much of this as practical. I think there's some redundancies in here.
Mm-hmm.
There may be some things, as you said, that are difficult to measure, but for the most of it, I think since we told them this is what we want and they said they do it, this is the measurement. But that's not to say we need to limit it to this. There are other things that maybe weren't laid out in here that we've learned in the last 2 years that we also now need to look at, that were not measured. And I think we need to identify those as well.
One of the things we could do to address your 1313
Mhm.
is add like a non-applicable or no opinion or something like that, or don't have enough information, so that an individual board member, if they didn't feel like they had enough information to make that decision, wouldn't just force a rating.
But that would affect the overall score. Like I'm looking at personnel staffing in the page 5, but that's irrelevant to the conversation. Currently, there's a potential for a 45 maximum score here. On the new list, it's 5. So there's more nuance in the larger document that has specific detail. Because we're either going to look at personnel staffing and rate it 1 through 5, or we're going to look at personnel staffing, read 9 different sentences of exactly what each one means, and then rate it out of 45 points. And I feel like there's way more value because, to your point of the 1313, okay, so I'm going to give that a 3 because I'm going to say it meets it. I don't know if you're stamping things. I kind of don't even care if that's happening because that doesn't affect me. That's an internal thing. But I'm going to rate it 3 because I don't know. That'll affect their overall if there's 50 or 60 points there. But if we just have the one thing and I have to take that into consideration, then does that drop them to a 4? When really they should be like between 43 and 45 necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
So it's more objective to look at the whole.
But did we built that when we were evaluating against finalists, correct? Also, so we have to recalibrate that to make that. And if we're going to take resident feedback also.
Yes.
So this is different. I mean, we can still, again, like the chassis is still accurate, but we need to figure out. And I think Bill brought up a really good point. I think we also, if we're going to do this, and I'm willing to listen to like all sides really. I think there are a lot of things you are doing and we need to figure out, or we could capture that, right? Because again, we're in a different point in time now than when the RFP was developed. So I think we just need to make sure that
But we're not under a different contract.
I understand that. Yes, but we still need to account for what they're doing. That's not in there because the community has changed over time. There are things that they're doing that they may have just picked up over time.
Can you give an example?
I can't give an example.
Okay.
Right now.
I don't think I'm thinking of it.
No.
Well, I think some of the things, the effectiveness by function in your D option, those are completely additional. And that focuses on function. And I see value in doing that as well. Or maybe that's what the community scores on. But I think that should be worked into it some way as well.
Bill, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it's actually a contractual question because I was not involved in the contract. We turned over the RFP to the board at the time and they took it from there. But the question is, assuming that we renew the contract, does it renew as is, or can we change some of the objectives and the goals and things? I don't know how, whether it's just renewable, or whether it's modifiable.
It's modifiable.
Okay.
You can renew it with an addendum with your
Because
changes.
because following up what I just heard, if you're doing things that we didn't think of at the time, we need to capture that.
Yeah.
And
Or extra that they didn't think they'd have to do.
right,
The other thing that bothers me about what Jared was saying, like the stamping, using the stamping as an example. And say, you know, you rated a 3 because you don't know, but Celia rates it a 1 because she doesn't know and could care less. You know, then what does that do if there's too many of those? It seems like we should have,
I think that's
if we
what
don't have enough information, then I think we should all rate it the same way.
Well, I think that's what he's saying. He's saying rate the 3 as opposed to my suggestion, which is to have a no opinion, not applicable. Rate it a 3 because that will basically,
That would at least give it points. If you rate it,
So that you're kind of like,
yeah, you're
Yeah.
going in the middle. You're basically,
like a C.
So for new board members too, and I don't want to speak for you, but we, you know, in 4 months, we really can't respond to a lot of these. So like, I would think for us, it's gonna be a lot of, now, look, I don't know, like, that's again, the thing we're gonna, yeah, very.
You may. I meant to also say you have to be careful for evaluation inflation. The medium number on this scale is 3, which meets the criteria for the contract. So if everybody's doing a good job, then 3 is the proper answer because they're meeting the contract. Anything higher than that would be, you know, exceeding over and above excellent work. So you watch out for inflation. Don't just start circling 5s because you feel good that day.
it's called the halo effect.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's recency bias too, right? You're also going to think about
Yeah.
what the best experience or worst experience for that matter.
As we said earlier, if you don't know about a particular contractor item, you should do a little research. Talk to the people that work here and find out. Are you stamping everything at the front desk? Just ask. You know, it will educate us.
Just ask.
It will
come in
educate us.
Randomly on a day and ask us for a pile of documents and internal audit.
I agree, because we should.
You need
we
to
should
know what
the
they're
answers to all
doing.
these, Yes.
And if you don't know, I want you to educate yourselves so that you will have a good evaluation. And then look at sample size. Get enough information so that you're evaluating correctly.
Yeah.
If you just got 2 points of input, maybe not. So what is the right sample size? You have to determine that because the board is the one that is upholding the contract with Grand Manners. But I like the idea. Now, you getting external feedback from the community is excellent. It will influence your vote, but remember, we didn't sign the contract. The association did on behalf of the board. So that it's your evaluation.
What do you mean it influences? If it's anonymous and we don't, and we just have that whatever, we're still doing our evaluation.
Oh,
How-
yes, you are.
Yeah.
But because you asked, it always influences how you think to some extent. That's okay. Because it's the board who is doing the evaluation because you're the ones that signed the contract with the management company. So you can ask for outside input. You can educate yourselves by talking to the staff about specific items. And that's the point of the evaluation. But even the conversation tonight, you remember all the details we talked about, project management, RFPs, what's the dollar amount? All that's important. And I hate for it to get rolled up and influence a general category when you could rate a specific item based on what you learned tonight.
well, and to Gary's point, when I was working, it was a 1 to 10 scale. And there were several managers that would say, you know, nobody's a 10.
That's right.
You know, so it's as hard as you thought you worked, you were never going to get a 10 from this person. So, you know,
But all of this will be aggregate across 7 of us. So that's all going to balance out.
exactly. And I don't look for us to wait to get, I think all this feedback should be going on at the same time. And then we compile what and then we look at what each segment also says and then see where that takes us.
And I think what Gary said too about an independent, you know, someone to just like collect this and analyze it, I think that makes a lot of sense too. So, and after talking through this, I do think that what Phil said, Jared and Gary, I'm sold on following more of the contract. I think it probably makes some sense.
Okay.
How do we get community feedback. That's the part. that-
Well, wait, hold on. That's item number 3.
Oh,
This is item number
okay,
1.
okay.
So have we decided that we are all going to take this form and we're going to rate based the 11-page thing? And go through and rate, I gave you a copy.
The
of it.
21-page thing.
I did, yeah, 21-page thing.
We're all gonna
And
complete
we're,
that.
yep, we're all going to complete
Has
that.
this, or are we gonna take anything out or?
No.
Put anything?
No. And to Jared's point, if it's like stamping the things, we're just going to say 3 meet standards. You know, if you want to do research, that's on you. You know, if you want to bring your payment in and see if they stamp it just for, you know, just a double check. But, you know, if they're not stamping it, it's because
You don't
they
stamp-
forgot.
You don't stamp checks.
You don't stamp the date on checks? Nope.
We do like ARC applications,
Yeah.
those type of things.
Okay. Yeah, I think we used to.
I'm sure.
The checks get logged in an Excel spreadsheet.
Yeah.
with the Check number and the date.
Yeah.
I got a poll pass
And it's
and it was stamped.
Oh, stop it.
No, really?
Okay.
At a what palace?
Pool pass.
Andrew D has his hand up again.
Andrew?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add, I know when you get to the number scales, there's different requirements that, you know, Celia might think something's an 8, where Jim might think something's a 6 and so forth. So I don't know if it makes anything easier or not, but is it something as simple as you're either exceeding expectations, meeting expectations, or below expectations to level it
Well,
out,
what
or
we're
is that
looking
what?
We're looking at
Yeah.
it, right?
I'm sorry, Andrew. What we're looking at is actually a 5-point scale. 1 being is below the standard of work, 3 meets standard of work, and 5 exceeds standard of work. So it's not that,
I
it's
think
not
the
that
standard
broad.
design is-
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
like a
then
Likert
if
scale.
they score 3s on everything, then they're doing their job. And
Right.
that's understood from all involved that, yeah, no one's
Right.
looking to get all 5s, kind of like a call-in center or something, but 3s are truly the base case of, yeah, you know, from a community standpoint, whatever you're rating it on, there hasn't been any complaints in the last 6 months on checks not getting signed or something of that nature. So, okay, they're doing your job. Now, can you do that exceedingly? Probably not, you know, so that's just something to take into account.
Okay, thank you.
I assume our evaluations, and it should be public once we're complete with them, correct? We would want that to be our own individual,
The aggregate,
yes, or our own individual, once everything is compiled and.
What do you mean public? With their names on it?
It's no secret. I mean,
Gary's shaking his head. What do you
I
think,
think
Gary?
aggregate is more important.
Aggregate. Okay.
You don't want to put yourself out there like that.
Okay.
well, and this is,
You can put it.
area there, but yeah.
well, and you know, when you think about it, when you do a review with your employer, they don't put it out for everybody to see either, you know?
It's public record.
No, but
I mean,
I mean, just, I mean, in general.
It's a different relationship. So I see what you're saying, right, is we want to be as transparent as
yeah, it's
possible.
transparency.
Yeah.
So if they go, well, the aggregate was a 4, how did they get to a 4? You know, or if the aggregate was a 3, was there people that were on 1 and people that were on 5? Not that we ever disagree on this board, but you know, something like that, I can see some value in it, but I'm okay either way.
So back to the resident feedback though, so I do think,
But we're not there yet.
oh, we're not, I thought you started talking. about
No.
it.
No, we're still agreeing what we're gonna do with this.
Oh,
So we're gonna take this, we're gonna grade it, we're gonna do whatever research that we as individuals feel is necessary to verify or, you know, whatever your score.
Mhm.
And then turn it in and we'll do the aggregate. Now, are we gonna use averages or are we gonna use totals like Gary suggested? So each section will have a 45, you know, like a,
No, you don't want to average each section. You want, it's a line by line average.
so total points for each section.
Well, it'll have total points average and it'll have each line average. Is that what you're thinking about?
can we appoint Gary to just honestly help us with this, like officially? I mean, I think your wealth of knowledge at this point, honestly, we have a lot on our plates and it would be beneficial in my opinion.
Take it like they do a QA of a hotel.
I wouldn't aggregate a sectional grade because there's so many variables in each line item that it skews what that section's about. What I was looking at is for an individual line item that comes out to be 3.5, so you're a little above the statement of work, a little bit above average, and everybody knows what that is.
So
But
you
if you-
want to average every item?
Yes.
Okay,
yes, ma'am.
But we
okay,
should
that's
look
not
at-
what I understood from what you said before. Okay.
It's not what I was saying, because I do think that, yes, we should do that, but I would like to know financial accounting and cash management. Did we score 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 overall for that category? Wouldn't that be of value to know they are exceeding work
For the whole category,
for the whole category?
that would be
Yes.
an aggregate for the whole section.
Yes.
You can do that, but I don't recommend it, but you can certainly, when the results are published, you can certainly do that on your own.
What's your reason for not recommending?
Because unless you're looking at each of the graded items in each category, you won't understand what that 3.5 means.
Yeah, but we're not necessarily gonna write down in 3.5. I think what he's saying is get an aggregate average.
As an aggregate for financial item, you're aggregating 11 or 13 different items.
Yeah.
And if that comes up to be 2.5, you'll go, well, what does that mean? You have to look at each item.
No, I believe, no, he says in addition to have something. You know, have you ever heard of TLDR?
Yeah,
Too
you can
long
do
didn't
that.
read?
I just
So
don't.
we want to,
Yeah.
you know,
You can
allow
do that on your
people
own. I
to,
just don't recommend it because each category is so, it's specific to our RFP, to our statement of work.
Right, so we should be able to say, in finance, we're doing an average of 4, or if the whole category is worth 100 points,
No,
it's a 90 score.
their categories are not worth anything. It's each individual line item is going to be graded, so you'll know how well you're doing in contracting, how well you're doing in ECHs, and how well you are in providing a monthly budget. I don't mean budget, monthly financials. It's going to be very specific for each line item. Now, if you choose to aggregate the whole category, you could do that. I just don't recommend it.
You don't feel like that would give us a good snapshot of what our overall finance
Because
opinion is?
look at the first section, which is operational support. There's what, 40 items?
Yeah.
All right, so that comes out to be 3.2. What does that mean?
I mean,
well, that's not all the information they're gonna get.
right.
They're gonna see the 3.2 and then they'll see the details if they want to.
I'm proposing providing only the details.
Understood.
That's my input.
I'm just trying to figure out why,
I'm interested.
what you're telling me, I'm sorry.
No.
What you're telling me when I said, why don't you recommend it, is it's not good to have it on its own. Completely agree with you, right? So what I'm trying to figure out is, why don't you think it's good as an additional data point?
Why don't we
That's
see
okay.
the 5s and 1s? Is
That's
that-
okay with me, as long as you don't separate them. If you're gonna.
No, it'll be,
If you're gonna publish the aggregate for the category, you've got to include.
yes, it's gonna say overall average, whatever, and then,
You decide,
okay.
but I wouldn't want to separate it and only. publish
No. I
the
agree.
category.
I agree.
That'll mislead a lot of people in the resident, in celebrations, because they won't know, well, what did that include?
Well, yeah, we want to provide all the detail.
Yeah.
And our averages
As
to,
long as you show both
to the
of them,
homeowner.
and I'll let you decide. Sorry.
well,
Gary?
for compiling them, you have to have direction.
Easy to confuse.
Yeah. Sorry.
Good question.
Here,
We're gonna put our own comments in as needed.
Yes. Yes, without any names attached to your sheet, I was going to compile all the comments, even if they're repetitive. So what if we get 3 comments or 4 comments that are the same? I'm going to publish all of them, so you'll see, oh, that was interesting. A lot of people thought the same thing.
Yeah.
So that you can evaluate it as a board. This was a repetitive comment. And there will be no attribution to it. It's just a comment. You all know that's going to be a lot better than just a numerical grade.
Lindy, I think, had her hand up.
what's the frequency? Come on over here so everybody can hear you. What's the frequency of this? This is the first time we're doing it. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I know, but when is it gonna happen again?
We don't know.
Every 3 years.
This is the mid-contract review, so
Yeah.
this is the first time. it's a 3-year contract or a year and a half.
Well, but
Okay.
isn't there value to doing, I think where you're going maybe is an annual evaluation so that you can,
see.
right, because,
It's going, you can scale it.
Well,
and
exactly.
know.
because you're,
We
at
do
your
it.
job, you're evaluated annually. You're not
Right.
evaluated every 3 years.
Well, that was supposed to happen last year, but it never
Exactly.
happened.
Too many other things were going
I
on.
think it's in the.
Ideally, it would be an annual thing. I would-
Yes, great suggestion. Thank you.
So we're gonna take this, we're gonna fill it out. Everybody's gonna fill it out.
Kelly has something.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is that the 21 page or 11 page?
21.
Okay, thank you.
So we're gonna take the 21-page thing. We're each gonna fill it out, just what I said before. Add any comments. And then are we agreed that we would want Gary to be the point person for this, to have him accumulate the data for us, for this?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So then we could, I don't know if we want to just send it to him. Gary, if we send it to you electronically, please, after we, or do you want a hard copy? What do you want?
I was gonna do a hard copy because as we all know with social media, as soon as you post something, it could go around the world. I would never forward that. I'm very careful about that,
Okay.
but I would hate for you to write something, send it by email. There's always the suspicion that it got
Okay.
forwarded by someone independently, unfortunately.
So we'll
I-
provide-
So we're gonna do
So how
this.
about, so how about if we do that and then we bring our results, each bring our results to the board meeting on the 26th? Make sure there's 7 of them, stick
Yeah,
them
I
in the
think it's a good
envelope.
amount of time.
Give them to Gary.
Yeah, great
No
idea.
names on it.
No names.
I will never know.
So Gary, we're gonna almost do this like when we did the RFP. When we voted, eliminated
Yes.
the different management companies and we scored them and all that. So it's almost the same.
It's the same.
We're not
There
making
won't
it
be
that
any
hard.
names attached to it. If I'm lucky, I'll get
David.
7 envelopes with information and I'm gonna compile the data and then give it back to you only,
Okay.
to the board. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? I'm not.
So there's no
forwarding-
trail of email or
No.
anything.
no, I'm gonna-
Perfect.
Well, I'll have a final electronic copy of the data, but there'll be no names attached to it.
Okay.
And
The
that's what I'm
anonymous.
gonna send you
Mhm.
so that you can distribute it as you see needed to.
You'll
the
do like
public.
board member 1, board member 2.
No, there won't be. Well, yes,
Yeah, without the name associated with it.
that's gonna be on the spreadsheet, but I
Yeah.
won't know who board member 1, number 2.
Oh, right, because we aren't putting our names on it,
That's
right?
right.
You know,
Exactly.
handwriting.
And to tell you the truth, in the final analysis, I wasn't even going to provide that. I was just gonna provide the aggregate for each line item.
Yeah, no, I believe, yeah, that's what we should have.
We were talking in the back, we may publish like a spread, so if you get a 3.8, the low score was a 1 and the high.
Oh,
the high
yeah, that's a
score
good
was
Yeah, that would kind of address us doing them individually, but it would tell you
Some,
whether there's consensus or not.
yeah, I was considering adding the spread.
Mhm.
So
I like
you-
that idea.
Well, and especially if somebody misunderstood the instructions and instead of writing a 3, they put a 1 for something that they didn't know, then if you saw that it was a 1 and a 3, then you would say, oh, well, this is wonky. You know,
If
kind
you
of thing.
choose to
Yeah.
abstain and put an NA, then I would annotate it as this numerical value is based on 5 scores.
Okay.
Not 7, but 5.
Okay.
So we would put that in comments, NA, if we don't want to respond.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
that'd be perfectly fine. And then I would annotate to everyone that the score is based on 6 people, not 7.
Okay.
And that kind of figures it.
David took his hand down, but I'm not sure if he doesn't want to talk.
Oh, are they?
No, it's there. Yes, he does want to talk.
Hey, guys, Dave Eastman, 1109
Oh,
Blaze
Dave
Street.
Eastman, that's me. Hi, Dave.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I was just,
Yes.
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I realize this is a fairly new process. Is there a reason you don't start this process by digitizing this process? And instead of manually entering all of your data and having Gary manually input it, which is opening up for a lot of potential errors, that you digitize this process as you begin it with a very basic, simple database The questions go out to each board member, and you can figure out how you want to keep it private, but you send it out to each board member, and they answer this electronically. And then it's in a database, and then Gary can manipulate the data. Let me rephrase that, can analyze the data to provide you the information you need, as opposed to doing it all manually.
Hey, Gary, we can talk afterwards. There's something called Microsoft Forms that you may be able to use for this, and if you need any assistance, I or the technology committee can help you with that.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, but just a work in progress. Start it this year. It may need improvement in the future, but get it going digitally, and then in the future you can make improvements.
Okay.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
Do we maybe also just kind of looking at the clock as we start getting into like the.
Yeah,
Do we maybe want to charge Gary with starting to think about the resident feedback process, and then maybe at the next.
I'll get some ideas on that. Can we get through at least
Yeah,
the evaluation?
I want to leave time because
Yeah.
we're gonna sacrifice.
But I'm watching.
Yeah, keep our.
Okay. So we're clear on that. So everybody's gonna do this. We're gonna bring it to the next our next meeting. And then Gary's gonna be here. He's gonna have an envelope. We're gonna shove these in and let him.
The only exception to that is if we can get a Microsoft things together sooner, but that probably.
But yeah,
So we're not gonna do the paper version.
I think, let's just do the paper
I
version.
think so.
I'll show Gary, or someone from the tech committee will show Gary how to use that, and when we ask him to do something similar, or someone else to do something similar in the
Well,
future, they can use that.
And I think the chances of Gary not double, triple, and quadruple checking his data is probably like slim to none.
Yeah,
So,
Gary's human error percentage is really, really small,
so anyway.
maybe
Okay.
infinitesimal.
So now here's,
I could go ahead and create one spreadsheet that shows all 7 scores and submit it to you so that you all know. You don't know who number 1 is, but you can see those scores, and you'll probably take I'm gonna hand the paper back to you, so you'll have your own paper copy.
I don't even think we need
Yeah.
to, I don't think we need to do that.
Wait, you don't think we need to do what?
Have the underlying data anonymized.
Why not?
Do you want that? You want everyone's scores on all of the items from all the board members with like board number 1, board number 2, board number 3?
He said he was gonna do a spreadsheet.
I can if you want to.
I know.
No, but it's
I know
extra
what
work.
spreadsheet is.
No, I know you know what a spreadsheet is, but he just suggested, what's wrong with that?
Why don't we start with the evaluation and then maybe
Yeah.
we build up.
and then he can always give us, if we look at it and say, yeah, maybe we do want to see, then we can always do that. But I don't want to tax him with too much. He was kind enough to offer, so if you just start with the beginning and then see if we want more information, you can always pull it, right?
Thank you for all your.
Yeah. Thanks, Gary.
Thank you. And thank you to the audience too.
Yeah.
And thank you for the work putting that together.
Yes, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's talk about the evaluation of grand managers. How do we want to do that?
We've been talking about the.
We've been talking about that. You mean something?
The resident.
No, the self-evaluation by grand manners. That's
True.
that's number 2 on the agenda.
I
That's something that Charles and I talked about. If you guys don't think that's a value, then we don't have.
Table that maybe, and
I just don't see value in that.
Yeah, if we're gonna have something, maybe we make that part of a workshop where they're presented and maybe there's feedback in terms of,
the only reason.
people not knowing this or people don't know that, because every time I talk to Lauren, there's something additionally that they're doing that I don't know about that's really good. And so, I think that might be something we consider.
But I do think, and I think there's value in talking about it as we go through this exercise, because I do think there's value in Lauren and team giving us feedback as a board, as a community, as a board, like, where do we stick? Like, where are we failing you? Where are we doing things?
So that wouldn't be a self-evaluation, that would be a board evaluation.
Thank you for tracking that.
I wasn't trying to correct you, I was just trying to figure out
No,
what
no,
you're
no.
asking for.
We're on self-eval, okay, so I'm sorry, and I'm skipping to the next one.
Oh, there is.
Then, yes.
So
I'm sorry.
am I hearing that we are not going to ask grand managers to do self-evaluation, that you don't think it'll add any value to the process?
I agree with that.
I mean, yeah, the only thing we could do is compare the numbers, but.
Yeah.
What?
I
Yeah,
agree with that, but I also,
Go ahead, Bill.
I think that there might be an opportunity in a different way to something lessons learned, things that they would like to do again or do differently or?
Well, and I would think that there'd be a discussion following this.
I mean, your management company, I'm sure you do this internally on a regular basis, but
Okay, so we're gonna forget about number 2 for now.
Okay.
Correct?
What if the, well, never mind.
Okay.
you weren't quite ready
Um,
to begin it.
I was gonna say-
This is another Charles idea. Evaluation of CROA board by Grand Manners.
Okay, so that's what I was talking.
There you
about.
go.
So, thank you, sorry.
You need an agenda. You look
This is
at
why
it.
3 hour meeting. Okay, thank you. So I do think there's value in that because I think I talked about this ad nauseum too, like we need to know from Grand Manners, where can we help? Where are we? What are we doing well? Is there anything we're doing well? Where are we failing? And I think we need to then, that gives us feedback because I think, not perfect, far from perfect. And I think that's, and again, anonymous, figure out the mechanism, it's Survey Monkey or paper or whatever.
Well,
But I think that's
Microsoft one.
well, whatever, but I think the spirit of it again is letting you all give us feedback. 'Cause I think the playground is a good example, I think, of things that probably could show up to those types of things, like, or, meeting once a month, the cadence of meetings, the communications, the emails, things like that.
Lauren? Since we're deciding how we're going to evaluate them, what do you think about her deciding how they're going to evaluate us?
I just want to throw something out there quick.
Yeah.
This is, we don't ask any of our contractors to evaluate us. And so this seems to be far from what, I understand the spirit and nature of it, but this seems to be, they're compensated for their work and we're evaluating the contract. This seems to be asking for something with a board that is always changing. And I just don't, this seems like a lot of work to ask of them for something that we're not asking of any of our other contractors. I don't see the full value on this because, they're also not going to say, you guys suck at this, whatever the topic is going to be. I don't think that that's something that we're going to hear from a contractor that we pay millions of dollars a year. So
Yeah, exactly.
I just think I appreciate the spirit of this, but I'm not sure that this is worth the time investment that it would require by Grand Manners. That's my opinion.
I guess I was thinking more like, communication, if they feel that we're communicating to them effectively as to what we want them to do,
Yeah,
those kinds of things.
but I think a lot of what we would memorialize in any kind of evaluation, we've already talked openly with the board in some of the workshops we've done, and also the training that we brought to the table. So I'm in agreement with Jared. I don't think it's necessary. I think there's 2 types of evaluations, the executive level evaluation of the board.
Yep.
I don't see value in that. I do see some value in the salary and hourly giving an evaluation. As Lauren and I had talked about doing something about their situational awareness and how they're satisfied as far as their job goes, working at CROA. But that would almost be an internal Grand Manners evaluation.
Yeah, I think we're
So
giving
we
them
could we could take their temperature on how are you feeling working at Celebration? And
Yeah,
then if
absolutely.
there's opportunities where we can make them feel better about working here.
Yeah.
If they're concerned about salary, how much they're making, if they're concerned about some of the things they're reading on social media that's bothering them.
Yeah.
That's more of an internal Grand Manners
Yes.
evaluating our own team. But I don't think it's appropriate for us.
Well,
to
I
be
think you have
evaluating.
kind of an internal conflict of interest between serving us and wanting to keep our contracts.
Exactly, yeah.
I'm being brutally honest.
But also this is not a traditional vendor putting in a playground. You're an
Right, that's
extension,
true,
you're
too.
an extension of Celebration in reality. So this is a very different relationship
No, I agree.
versus Phoenix Works, who, is putting in a playground and then leaving at the end of the day. You're part of Celebration. We have an interest in, working together and really, I think we consider you part of our community and family. So it's a different, in my opinion. I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from. And if there's some type of,
Yeah, I like the concept of the feedback.
Yeah.
I just don't know whether evaluation is
Formalized as an evaluation.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
And like Roger said, we're getting that as it happens because we need to, not as a here, let's sit down and do this. It needs to happen when it happens.
Yeah.
Rather
I
than.
think if we're waiting on an annual basis to speak up,
Yeah.
we're not doing our job.
Yeah.
Billy, is that your hand up or are you playing with your pen?
Jim kind of summarized it. But yeah, having been on that side of the table and been in management, it's a little awkward to ask me to criticize the client. And nor will I give an honest one because I want you to sign my contract. So it's but feedback as to communications things or things that we could do better, ongoing, as Roger said, I think is the way it should happen. So that we need to hear back at, we need to, like, we don't know what the board wants. If we don't tell you what we want, you should tell us that. But beyond that, evaluation is just not the right word.
So,
Yeah, that's fair. Yep. Yep.
so we're crossing off number 3.
Yep.
Now, shareholder evaluation of brand manners methodology. So how do we want to go about getting feedback from my idea? They know the people who come into the desk. They know the people that send emails. They know every contact they get, who submitted ARC applications, who got dinged with the covenants letter, blah, 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 blah. I would advocate just a random sampling of people. And those are the people you send, maybe 5 open-ended questions to. How was your experience? I'm concerned if we open it up too broadly to the community, that there's many people who maybe never even had stepped in this building or had any reason, never got a covenants letter, never had any reason to get ARC, that will rate them based on what they've read on social media or what their neighbors said who may have had a bad experience or whatever. But that's me.
Yeah, but that's their perception. And they may have a bad perception of Grand Manners because we don't say the right things in these meetings about what Grand Manners is doing. And we don't promote the things enough because, the events are great, but they do so many things behind the scenes to try to make this better and that show their investment in this community. And I don't think people see that. So I think some of that would reflect on us, right?
I kind of think we could compliment them at our meetings and talk about just answering.
I thought we were waiting until someone.
I thought you took a breath.
Either way, I'm fine.
I'm sorry.
Either way, I'm fine.
You took a breath.
I tend to.
Just keep talking.
people, so
I
I'm
agree with you.
more comfortable with that.
Like, we do compliment them when they do.
Well, we compliment them on events.
No, at the end of, you want to pull up all the board comments.
No, yeah.
It's always.
When something comes up at a meeting, we do compliment them,
Yes.
right? I'm just saying that they should not, whatever they get from the community, they shouldn't necessarily take all that on themselves,
Right.
right? We share in that. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with what you were saying, but the only problem with that is this. You can't ask your contractor to tell us to pick the select market, because
Well, it's not select, it's just somebody that has had an opportunity to actually interact with them.
right, but they're not gonna give us all the people who are furious about their ARC denial.
Yeah, I mean,
It's gonna be,
I would rather add something to the evaluation that said, I have interacted them with on the phone, I've interacted with them in person, I've heard this from other people, something like that, as opposed to choosing a subset based upon that.
Yeah, and there's also transactional, right? So there's, with art as an example, right, versus the overall brand manners as a total, like how have they been doing? And I do think, I agree with you, like if you just put it out to a certain percentage, I think you're cutting off. I mean, I think you should open it up. And again, I think if you put open-ended questions in there and you have a balance of not just 1 through 5, I think you'll get some valuable feedback so that you're not just necessarily, taking, 500 people who say Grand Manor stinks and rates them a 1, and then we give you a 1. But you've got real open-ended feedback that's a part of that we can then take, digest, really.
Sarah Work, 2303 Celebration Boulevard. I find it interesting that we can sample there, but we can't sample on some of the RFP items in that 21 pages. But regardless, I think sending it to only people that receive a covenant letter, well, you've already annoyed the people with a covenant letter. So I don't think you want feedback necessarily from them. I've never gotten one. My feedback would be much different. Thank you. Yes, I am proud. But I do come in, for dog license. I do, when I closed on my house, I did get 4 letters reminding me to pay within days of each other, which was interesting, and I just tossed them. So there are different things that we experience that you may or may not know about. The sky won't fall, but it would probably be just nice to know, that these are just things that are happening that you can take into consideration and prioritize what needs to be fixed or what can, be handled. But I do think just sampling certain things, just like with the vote for the sport that we don't have amenities for on Lot D, the people that want to participate in it will, if given the opportunity to give feedback. The ones that don't care, don't want, will not, for whatever reason. But the squeaky wheel shouldn't always, be the one to talk. Sometimes there's good things to say, and you'd want them, not just the people who are getting letters for offenses.
But I hear what you're saying, but not everybody who gets a letter is annoyed either.
Well, let them be happy, but regardless, that sample
You have a
size is
sample?
not the entire population.
So do you have a suggestion? Let's put it this way.
I would just, whether, I don't know how the
Email
voting,
blast.
pardon me?
How about an email blast?
That's what I,
Like comes
just,
out.
it doesn't have to be that serious, just say we're gathering feedback. You have the emails, you send out the blast. We're gathering feedback. Do you have any comments based on your experience with Grand Manor?
And if somebody
And if they-
chooses to respond, they
Yeah.
respond.
Because what is a 3 from me gonna give you? Nothing.
I do
But-
like what Jim's, sorry, I didn't interrupt. I do like what Jim said about asking, like, maybe when was the last time you contacted
Maybe
Grand
that's the
Manners?
last
Give them
time.
the phrase, because then we can really evaluate. If someone hasn't
That's
talked to
one
Grand
of the
Manners in a
questions
year.
in the email
Yeah,
blast.
then-
Puts their response in
Interacted.
context.
What are you
Yes.
saying? What are you doing?
Yeah.
You know?
And maybe 2 or 3 open-ended questions. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah, I think if you
And
just,
then the last thing is, please describe your personal interaction with Grand Manor, like where you're getting your information from.
Keep it simple to the residents when they get the
Yeah.
email.
and I think we need to sit down with Gary and eventually, as we sort through this and as we start weighing the board feedback, the resident feedback, I think we need to come up with some form of, composite, right? Board is going to be 40% resident, 60%, what have you. But I think that's going to be a critical point of evaluation of getting resident, because I do maintain residents have a different experience than we do, right? We're interacting with you on a really different level day to day than someone who's coming in here to town hall to, to get a decal or something. So that feedback has to be collected and it has to help inform the process.
So if we do an email blast, who gets the response?
Yeah,
Lauren
That's
get the
all we
response
can look
or
at.
should
No,
Gary get the response?
yeah, we have to have
a conversation.
someone
Like, if-
outside of both entities probably,
Right, party.
who will do that. And I think that's why it's better to do it digitally. We can spin up the communications advisory group if we want, because they did one.
They used SurveyMonkey and we
Yep.
gave them control of the account
Oh,
during
yeah.
that time.
Yeah, so I
You
don't know
gave
if we
who
want
control
to.
the account.
The communications group.
So can we give Gary the control of that? Since
Gary's
No.
He's done. He's full.
I like your idea of the communications committee. You could reactivate them for a 6-week period, 4-week period. They have experience and SurveyMonkey is a cheap way to go.
Yeah. And I think too, Monday matters, food truck Friday. Put it on the signage outside.
Oh, no, what they did is they had it digitally, and so they went with pads, iPads and Surface pads to those places and got the information, obviously after they shut their quota.
But multi-channel, and again, I
Yeah.
think that's where.
Yeah, and obviously we have to let people know that if they want to fill it in by pencil or pen, we'll give them some paper to do that.
Yeah, make it accessible again, different touch points,
Yeah.
and magazine, what have you.
So say you did an email blast and you had, the CROA board is interested in your feedback, concerning the performance of Grand Manners, yada, 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 yada. Click here if you care to participate. Then if they do that, can you set it up so it goes to
It would take them straight to whatever,
whoever?
if they did SurveyMonkey or whatever, and then the SurveyMonkey results would be sent to the email of the person that's
Is that what we're talking about?
pulling all that stuff.
That's
I
part
don't
of it?
think we need to do iPads and paper,
No,
like that's,
archaic.
we're not Disney looking for statistical data so that we
Well,
can make
wait,
more
so
money.
The more data we have, the better.
What we did with the comms committee is we had QR codes and strategically placed
I think they
locations,
had,
like.
I just think they had a
events
good
on
plan. I'm not saying it's going to be the same exact one for this as it was for them, because they had different guidance in terms of what they want to collect. And they didn't differentiate between
CROA members and non-CROA members. It was a resident thing. So obviously the scope would be different.
Yeah.
But, is that something that you think you can do as part of management, or do you want the assistance of the advisory group?
We shouldn't ask.
Well,
management to
somebody
write
needs to create the
evaluation.
questions.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Well,
No, I'm talking about like
The process.
managing it.
I have no problems. I mean, it goes into Survey Monkey and I can't manipulate it at that point. It just spits it out.
I think reactivating the communications group temporarily for this initiative is not doing justice to the longer term communication pain points that we have. So I think if we're going to do that, we need to just create them full time or don't create them at all. Because
Well, yeah, I was talking about redoing the advisory group. If it's between that and a communications committee, I definitely want a committee.
yeah. And if we can get creative too, I don't know if we can even like apple off a hat, if you, things like that.
We do that at Food Truck.
Yeah, I do that.
I mean, just to incentivize people to take the survey, whatever, like
And what if 2,000 people do the survey?
limited supply.
Oh, while supplies last?
But just, yeah, again, like a 4-week campaign, whatever. And we'll need to talk too about the time frame for that, which, Gary, we can work
Well,
with.
yeah, but, and then I was thinking too, since you want to reach as many people as possible,
Mm-hmm.
you can even put something, one of those stand-up things.
The
in the
A-frame.
Yeah, no, the
Kiosk?
things where you put papers to the 8.5 by 11. And, please take this survey and leave it at the front desk and maybe put that ballot box out
That's what I
there
was
and have
thinking,
them
so we
fold
can
it
have
through
it
there
paper-wise.
and just put it there.
Yeah, I was talking about that before, to do
Yeah.
a paper, but that would be good
Yeah.
additional process. for
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
That, I don't want to touch
Well,
that.
can't you just, whoever, if you give them the stapler and say, here, staple this shut, and they put it in there.
No, but
Yeah,
someone's
but
gotta
that's fine.
bulk
Somebody
those,
has to open
Yeah,
those and
write
put them into the
Yeah.
the
Well, whoever
electronic
that would-
survey.
With things like,
I would drive it through Survey Monkey. I wouldn't mess around.
yeah,
with it.
Survey Monkey and Microsoft Teams, you can be anonymized.
Making it difficult, that's right, just do it through the Survey Monkey, whoever answers.
Yeah,
answers.
and we can have a
Whoever does it,
kiosk, we
does
can
it.
bring
As
out,
simple as that.
have front desk
Like
have
we
a pad.
do, like we do for the elections, we make a laptop available for people who want to vote
That's
electronically at
That's
town hall. They can put in their credentials and they vote, and then we take the
Cool.
laptop.
That's great.
We'll
Perfect.
put QR codes at all the facilities. We can even put A-frames maybe at a certain place in a village.
Yeah, cost effective too, right?
Cost
You don't need to
effective,
print
yeah.
out 1,000 flyers. or
But
whatever.
is there a way, is there a way that you would be able to pull out duplications if you do that? Duplication?
Not if you do it anonymously.
So how do we want to go about crafting the question?
Well,
So-
here was my thought. Between now and the next
That's
meeting,
per
or
unit.
if you want,
Want a husband and a
Well,
wife.
put down your ideas for questions. That I'm thinking we're looking at only maybe 3 questions, 4
Yeah.
questions.
Do we want to charge Gary maybe with coming up with recommendations?
Well, I think
You
that
want to do it.
he doesn't want,
He doesn't want to write the questions?
how about if we're talking,
I'm saying writing the question.
We're talking
Writing the, no, writing the question.
we're talking about writing 3, maybe 4 open-ended questions.
Just keep it easy.
Right.
Yeah.
And each of us between, maybe with,
Well, yeah, I think we should have the net promoter score, the overall, how do you feel?
Well, these are different.
but yeah,
Yeah. Net promoter, I think, is a different, it's we have to figure out how to attach that to like the email signatures. How do you incorporate that into like your different touch points throughout our ecosystem?
Yeah, no,
That-
it should be further than that, but we haven't had any of that. So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
that's data, right? As opposed to
100%.
trying to get together people's comments, which is much more challenging from a data perspective.
Yeah, there's, transactional, like, when you, how was your experience with
The Survey Monkey.
it's,
So once you do I know it. So if Lauren sends the email blast out, I get the email, I choose to do the survey. I did the survey.
Yeah.
Can I go back and do it again?
yes.
And again and again and
What about a
again?
thing like Medallia?
So then,
What's that? Tell
Like,
us
for
about that.
example, hotels utilize Medallia. When you buy a car, it's Medallia. Who else uses Medallia? I think Best Buy uses it.
What is
So-
it?
So is
It's
it
a
like,
survey.
it's a credentialed,
Right,
It's sent to
a
one
survey
email
is sent
address
to
and you
one
click it
email
once.
address, and then you can make the questions. And
Does
then
it
there's a
cost?
box for overall comments. The cost, I'm not sure what the
but you
cost is, but
also, don't you just want the resident to answer once and that's it? Not.
That's-
Yes,
so-
absolutely.
that's
That's what
what
we're trying to
email
do.
address.
Rather
We're
than
trying to figure
survey
that out.
monkey, she's suggesting this.
That's what this
Something
does.
like that.
It's like, yeah, online
Where
voting.
you can only respond once.
Not our online
And once you
It's a link.
respond, you're done.
It's a link.
The other thing, and we probably do need to move on, but the other real benefit of doing the resident feedback is so that, I know you love talking about the social media feedback, I love that, but this gives us real empirical data to rely on, to give to you versus just saying so-and-so posted this on the front or back porch. It gives us data to actually work with you and about what you're doing well, where can we improve? So I think then that gets in front of that issue where now we have real credible, good.
Half the people that are happy that like I talk to on a daily basis, they don't go on the front or back porch.
They're not on social media.
They refuse to go on there.
Mm-hmm.
So you can push that,
I understand.
what you said out through,
The emails that you
email.
have on file.
okay.
But the email on Monday is different than the emails that go out with the Friday Flash. Because the Friday Flash, anybody could sign up for that. That doesn't even live in Celebration. I thought that was supposed to be a separate QR.
They're different mailing lists, but we don't audit it regular to see if somebody left that still gets that email address.
But somebody to get on it has to come into
It gets
town.
audited probably quarterly to see.
But you could, as I say, you could use the last, what we used for voting for the referendum as the list. Wouldn't you?
That's pretty current.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can send it out through Serenet, so then it's everybody who has an email address on file with us.
That's a resident.
Yes.
That's what I meant.
It's an owner.
Mhm, an owner.
My thought was, if you want to, sleep on this for a couple days and then email me all your questions and I'll put them all in one thing. And then at our next meeting or before, if you want, we could say, I like question number 3, number 5, whatever, and go from that. What do you think?
Yeah, I would rather make the final decision at a board meeting.
Right.
But I think that's a good way to
Yeah.
collect our information, and then if we get
Exactly.
additional owner comments that seem like something
And
we
then-
missed, we can incorporate that.
Can I throw one more curveball?
No.
No.
I think you need a slider. That's what I gave you this to throw me a slider.
You interact with renters also, so is there value in also extending this where we have an option rent versus own? I'm trying to think if there's a way
Why would we interact with renters?
for amenities for you interact
They're not-
with renters.
They're not owners
But they
that
get-
sign
They're
the
not part of the
contract.
association.
Yeah, but they get
I understand
pro
that, but
ID cards,
they
and the management is responsible for
Again,
giving
it's,
them.
it's, I'm just thinking, and if it's not, then I'm just trying to think if there's value in that, maybe not, but just throwing that out there. All right, well, it's.
Is that
I
okay?
kind of like the idea.
I mean, it's.
So by,
We can talk about it some more.
Yeah, we can.
so like by next Wednesday, if you could all just kind of do some, just spitballing some questions, I'll make a list of all the questions. If you want to make suggestion, do you want just a narrative? Do you want to put some kind of a scale?
Mhm.
Let me know that. And then also, how you want to find out from them, what are the questions just in general, like, is it how long have you lived here? Have you personally interacted with anybody at top, those kinds of things?
Yeah,
at
some
the-
demographics.
Yeah.
That lets us rate
Yeah.
the validity of the comment.
Yeah, so
Lindy?
you can put that at the bottom
Big
too.
renters do count, but there's a criteria for how long you live here. I mean, I can see renters having good experiences and bad.
Yeah, we have a lot of people who are renting for decades.
And their information is still valid.
And renters do interact with CROA too, at the end of the day.
That's right.
There's still a level of
That's true.
interaction with Grand Managers.
Give them,
We're not saying we're building homeowners, but it's not going to necessarily drive activities that maybe.
And there's not going to be an equivalency. We're not trying to
Correct.
say it. It'll be two separate
Correct.
sets of data that we'll look at based upon
So it'll be
The amount of
renters
data.
data and homeowners.
Yeah,
data?
bucket it differently.
possibly.
I'm just throwing it, spitballing.
If we have the renter's credentials on file.
Depends on if they have a valid
Well,
lease on file.
Yeah.
Exactly.
that gets
Sometimes,
into
like I
the-
said,
Moving
something
on.
out in the
Yes.
budget matters.
Let's move
A
on.
couple of weeks ago, you need to have a lease.
That's
It's
1700
required per our
renters on
government
the
documents.
boulevard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something we should probably give our opinions on.
In
so we know.
SurveyMonkey or in Teams form, or sorry,
Yeah.
Microsoft Forms, there's a branching off point when you
Yes.
answer a question.
Logic.
If you're, are you an owner? Yes, okay, you get this set of questions. Are you a renter? Okay,
Yeah.
yes, you get this.
Pivot table.
Well, that's on the back. It comes back into the Excel spreadsheet. and
Then while we're trying to figure out the
It
questions,
has some
would you ladies or, and you, Roger, whoever,
graphs.
kind of make some suggestions as to how we're gonna push it out, what software, what do you call that?
I
What
think that
format?
one that you recommended is gonna be very expensive.
It is.
Oh, the one that the
Yeah.
dealers, okay.
They
I
don't
was
have,
just
they don't
looking
have
at-
pricing on their website, so it's expensive.
Yeah, if you have to ask, you can't afford it.
We already have a Survey Monkey account, so
I think that's the.
we'll do that or
the data
the
we're trying to
Teams
get.
forms, whichever works better. with
It
the
doesn't have to be elegant. It
Whatever.
doesn't need to
You
be,
just,
yeah.
you make the phone.
Something that gives us data.
All right, so a week from today, submit your questions to me. I'll get it ready for the next board meeting, and then we can discuss, throw this one out, keep this, I really like this, change this, blah, blah, blah.
You want to set a deadline for the board? Evaluation.
We'll have that to you by the next.
Yeah.
meeting.
Yeah,
Next meeting.
next meeting is the,
And that's when
2
you're gonna be here with your envelope.
we got 2 weeks for our
Be
homework.
sure to tell David.
Oh, yeah.
I assume he'll watch this meeting to know everything that happened while he was gone.
Oh, I'm sure he's probably, yeah, he's probably. Okay, well, yay. So we got that. So we got a good start on that. The things are gonna come together for the next step, I guess, the next meeting, that's in 2 weeks. So I think that's an excellent timeline to just keep things rolling. Okay. Next is create a formal resolution for master plan advisory group.
Before we get into that, can we agree to move key partner exercise just so we maximize our time on
Keep our
the
what?
key partner exercise? Can we table that to the next workshop?
Sure,
or something, just so we have to maximize our time.
Sure.
Or if everyone's in agreement.
Sure, yeah. That was your thing anyway, so
Yeah.
you're fine with
Cool,
waiting
that's
till
fine.
next workshop?
Yes, just so we get a good.
If it was, because it wasn't clear to me when he started talking. What he's saying is there's that item number C on the agenda,
Yep.
key partner exercise. That's something that Charles has taken ownership of, and he's fine with leaving that to the next workshop so we can concentrate more on B.
Yep.
So,
Since we are 47 minutes away from our
Yeah.
initial end time.
okay. So what do we want this group to be? Somebody, I think it was you, maybe it's you, Charles, at one point mentioned that they thought none of these master plans ever got off their feet was because there was really nobody pushing it. There was nobody really paying attention to whether or not we got the things done, in a timely manner. There was never any follow through on it.
Well, yeah, for instance, I think if we do this, we should also say, as a new board comes in, these things should happen.
Exactly.
Yeah. And
And
it's,
somebody needs to follow up on it.
yeah, it's having, I mean, we know a master plan exists in multiple iterations.
Mhm.
We know the board flips over each year. That's a known. We know different projects percolate and change, but we need to be consistent, have some consistency. It's odd that we've spent all this time and money and resources on all these past master plans, only then to get sidetracked on other things. So I think this board, I would say, needs to take that step. We need to stop all the past boards that have derailed those. And this is where I think it begins today, where we put this resolution together. We do this, we acknowledge the work, the research that's been done, and we engage the community for feedback, and we really make this a collective process. Jerry did a lot of work with really kind of starting brainstorming at a high level, what this would look like, the goals, and the composition of it. So I think that may be a good place maybe to kind of start with, or
A jumping off.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that's, but I don't know.
So do we want it? I think when I last talked about this, my thought was that it would end up being a standing committee.
I think that was Jared's. Yeah.
Yeah, because then that way there's some consistency that, that they're monitoring it quarterly, whatever, pulling somebody's coattails saying, hey, this is coming up, we need to start ramping up for this now. Not that you guys can't do it, but it'll take something off your plate and make sure that things are moving along. rather
yeah.
than a task force that's gonna go away in 60 days or something like that.
Well, either way is fine. My original recommendation was to do a advisory group
Mm.
and with the idea of turning it into a committee after the initial plan was set.
Mm-hmm.
But that kind of separates the responsibilities of, right now, you're working and developing a comprehensive master plan. A committee is seeing that that's executed and maintained.
And adjusted.
Right. So those are two different functions, and just to delineate, they may be different people even. The people on the advisory group may be different than the people on the committee helping us move forward.
Yeah, and this is future state too. I think like we need to get through, we need to do the resolution. We need to get A, B, and C together. I think D and E and all this future state of committees and what this is going to look like down the road. We don't even have like the basic foundation of this together, because we could find maybe the task force or maybe the committee's not necessary. We already have 1,000 committees right now, so it's death by
We
committee.
do not have
We
1,000.
got a lot of committees right now, a lot of committees.
1,000 minus.
I don't think so. We have,
We have a very big community with a lot of very smart people.
You don't want to over.
I'd rather, we had a lot of applications to the committees this year. So I would rather get more people engaged on a committee basis than not. That's my personal opinion.
There's a famous musical that says, not every issue needs to be settled by committee.
Jared,
They're not but they're not settling it. That's the whole thing. They're researching,
Nonetheless.
they're getting directions. I mean,
My point is, it's a future state. I don't think we're gonna be able to solve right now if this is going to be a committee or
yeah,
whatever.
I
the
don't have a
future
problem
state
with that.
is. Okay.
No.
That's right.
No, for the advisory group, we want to do what we did for the other advisory groups, which is to give them a scope, to give them a mission, and to have some time period on it. And to your point, I think it's a different endeavor than the standing committee and what their goals would be.
Because you're right, I do agree, they would only meet quarterly. Like if you're a master plan committee, that is not a monthly group.
Mhm.
It might even be just twice a year, because you're looking at the overall thing and the spend doesn't happen at that
Yeah.
fast.
And to give management 6 months notice, hey, in 6 months from now, we should have this in place
Right.
already.
You should
Yes.
have the scopes of work created, the RFP is created.
Yes.
and-
So they can add it on their list of things to do along with all the regular day-to-day business as usual stuff.
So Jared, you mentioned advisory group.
Yeah.
So we could do an advisory group to initiate the whole process, because we don't want to start with the committee. The committee gets put in place when everything is done.
Yes.
So we're gonna do an advisory group, and maybe around 10 people on the advisory group. And maybe give them a time frame. I got it all written down here because I'm trying to coincide with your suggestion also. So you give them a time frame to work, like the advisory groups, the town hall, for celebration hall and communication. So you say, okay, you got 30 days, right? And you have an official town hall meeting with the residents and the advisory group. And keep it with the board, but keep that board level at that just one time. Because when we had the advisory groups last year with Celebration Hall, they didn't get, and I know Paul is in here, so he was on that group. When the board's part of it and the group is part of it and they're all talking, there's a lot of time wasted. So if we have the initial town hall meeting with the board present and the advisory group and the residents, like I had said at the workshop, saying, this is what we want. We want this, we want that. We want.
you're talking about the mission of
Yeah.
the advisory group?
Right.
Yeah.
So they get feedback from the community. And then they take all that feedback from the community and they have 30 days to use this feedback, put it together, present it to the board, present it to the community.
Well,
Is that something like you're thinking? I don't know. We think on the same, I'm
well-
asking him if we're thinking because he came up with it. That's why I'm
Okay.
asking.
Yes, yes, I kind of outlined, it'll be more than 30 days. The the essence of what you're saying is right. Yes. It's
And
gonna
you
take
had
more than
like
30
one
days.
committee member from each committee because they have a stake in this also.
Yes,
And then a few
then-
residents
yes.
from the community.
Yep.
As part of this. And when they meet, of course, it's hard to get all these people to meet together. Maybe meet, branch off, I don't know.
They have to develop a survey that we,
Right.
I mean, this is what we're discussing now. I
Right.
think they should develop a survey that goes out to the community. So this now, maybe I'm retracting on that expensive thing because we can't have everyone take the survey 30 times for this. We need each resident, each owner to only take it once. And then, so then we hear that there's 50 things that we should be building in Celebration.
Mhm.
We go from that list to the most important things and figure out what the top 3 or 5 are. And from there, we put numbers to those things and figure out what can we do now? What can we afford out of these 3 or 5 things? This is the priority that residents want them in. And how do we forecast this budget wise and planning wise? Like it takes 2 years to build a building or, 18 months to build a building, but it takes 8 weeks to do a playground upgrade. We look at everything and put it on a schedule. That's what they would present to us as a
The
final.
advisory group,
Yes.
right.
Here's how this would work budget wise. Here's where the priorities are, but you can't do this until you do this. And it all kind of goes out with a 3, 5, and 10-year projections.
I think there's a lot of value to that. I also think we need to be careful to not solve all of this for the advisory group.
Correct.
We need to figure
Right.
out, give them the dates
Right.
and let them back into that. How do they want to get there?
Well,
And maybe a survey is not the way to do it. Maybe they want to do
Sure.
a different way.
A town hall meeting where the
Let them,
residents
yeah,
show up.
let them do it. I think this is a really good time to engage the community and get feedback and build the composition, right? So figuring out how do we want the application process to look like, what type of resident are we looking for, certain skills, qualifications? Obviously with finance, we look for accounting, finance, whatever. So it's like, I think we need to talk about that. Like, what is the composition of that going to be like?
right, but
And even at a higher level too, what is a master plan? Like, we need to really start at the top and build down.
I'm just wondering, were you suggesting that it only be the results of the town hall, but, or more like the advisory groups did last year, where they did a bunch of work, they presented their work, they got additional feedback, and then did a final
No,
report?
you do you get the feedback from the community first.
Okay,
Like I said at our workshop, get like the residents that are in the audience now with the board and the advisory group, initial, hear from the community. Whatever information they get, could be through email, could be live in person like they're here now. Give it all to the advisory group and say, here, go at it.
well,
We're operating down here already. We need to go up several levels and we need to figure out, we can't be dictating how are they going to do this? The town hall, we let them dictate how they want this to look to us. We need to figure out what is their charge? What is the composition going to look like? And what is the time frame? And then that's it. And then empower them to do this.
Yeah, but we have
I'm
to
glad you said that
we have to have feedback from the residents.
That's why
Let them
that's their
figure out
goal.
how to
Their
do
goal is to go out and figure that out and come back to us and bring us the recommendations and empower them. That's why you do committees. That's why.
Then we just sit here and they tell us,
Correct.
you need to build 6 pools and 80 basketball courts, and we figure out how to do that. I mean, it may be that, who knows? That's what we do.
I mean, they
Two
need to be the
people-
ones who develop the framework and
Correct.
figure out how to get
Correct.
feedback in various forms. And they need to develop their framework before they even reach out to
Mhm.
get feedback.
but we
They
want
need to
some,
develop the templates
And
and
we need to be
the surveys and the interviews and all of that.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but we have to be very careful about, in my opinion, board interactions and board interference with this group. Let them operate autonomously. Let them do their mission and charge without interrupting, without showing up to the meetings and being a de facto member. Let them do it. We figure out the composition. We give them the time frame. We give them the research. We give them the tools to be successful. And there's plenty of stuff out there. And then
We have the reserve study.
but the 5, I think you mentioned this, have expertise.
The
in-
5
in
at-large members are, yes, have expertise in the various areas that we need.
Yeah, so they're not like a communication advisory group where they're just getting the opinions.
What do you
That's
mean?
part of the process.
What do you mean, the various
Yeah. Can you,
Period. What is that?
Like, we would want someone with a strong financial background and another person with a strong urban planning background and someone with a strong construction background. Of the people from the community,
Architect.
they should be specialized in something that has helped, that's of useful to a master plan.
I think that's got, but we have to be careful too. I think because there are people who are involved in obviously like youth sports or other things. So we need to be, we don't want to cut off, right? If you don't have the qualifications. And I think 5 is, that makes sense, but we really need to, I think this is a great time to really, get out and bring the community out to get involved in this process.
Yeah, everyone should apply and we can look at everyone that wants to be on this.
Yeah, but it worries me, like if you don't have finance, I think we have to be careful about that. I think a lot of people can offer value.
An alternative could be, like, I know you want committee feedback and you want the committee, a committee member to be involved from each committee because they have a stake and usually there's a management liaison there. What if you have all committees being at large from the community and not have committee members on there? Because we hear from them on a regular basis, but as part of the master planning group and their framework, you can nudge them towards, talk to the committee members, talk to the chairs, talk to the management liaisons. So then that input is captured, but they're not, you have more variety contribution from the community.
2 people, Dr. Barr has been waiting forever, and then Andrew D.
I was gonna say something that was relatively important, but now I don't remember what it was. So I'll write it down next time.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Who'd you say was first? Dr. Barr?
Dr. Barr.
Dr. Barr. Hey, Jerry.
Hi, it's Eileen Barr.
11.
Hi.
It's Eileen.
It's Eileen.
Jerry's.
Eileen Barr, 1138 Mosaic Drive, Yeah, I would like to suggest as a really good committee structure to think about was the one that was used for the Charter Review Committee. And I know, Celia, I remember you coming to a lot of those meetings. Basically, excuse me?
Absolutely, I remember that.
Basically, the committee members there were used as information gatherers, expediters, and facilitators. There was a list, and hopefully, if Gary's still there, he can fill in some more information because he was the superb head of our committee. A list was drawn up by the board and by the administration about questions that they wanted us to address about possible changes or things to look at in the charter. And then we were broken up into groups. Everybody had a certain section, for example, finances, or I'm not exactly sure what some of the others were, but then each committee member ran a number of workshops open to the entire community. People came in, they told us about their issues, they told us about the things we were discussing, and there was tremendous community input. Then that information was brought back to the central committee, the people on the committee, plus board members, plus staff members, and then they were discussed again. I think it was just a really, and in addition, and this is where I remember Celia, we had a number of Saturday morning roundtables when we had gotten the list down to some of the things that we felt needed to be changed in the charter. Then you sat with a group of people and said, this is one of the things that we're considering putting in. What do you think about it? And they would give us additional input. And it was just a very effective, very, very open way of getting the community involved. And all I can say is, and then finally there was a town hall. All I can say is that the charter, even though it was a yes or no vote on a large number of items, passed without any problems, which was a very good thing. But I think it's ideal for this kind of, because it's easy to say master plan, but it's a very, very complicated issue. And there's a whole bunch of issues that you've addressed yourself. For example, uses of facilities. Should our facilities be open to everybody? Should it only be open to, owners and renters or people with cards? Should everything be locked? Should people be able to bring guests to play on our tennis courts? Location, should we be building in-town facilities, or should they be, isolated in a different area? That was a very big reason that the fields went forward, because people didn't want to have league games on a big field across the street from them every Saturday morning, leaving old pizza boxes. Finances. I mean, it's very easy to break this down, master plan, into 5 or 6 or 7 different areas, each of which perhaps should be discussed, just as we did on charter review, led by a committee member, and just facilitating meetings just on that area. And I think I've hit most of my key points. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. We should say Andrew's on there too. Andrew again. Andrew?
Yeah, Andrew, 1127 Mosaic. So I guess my vision for you guys on the master plan is that this should truly be a living document that changes, say, quarterly. That there's challenges today that face this board regarding soccer fields, A51, et cetera, that needs attention and needs direction on what the community wants for those. Whereas, yeah, I want a community center, but it ain't happening for 3 to 5 years. So not really too important to talk to in the master plan of doing a review now when that's so far off. So in being a living document and being updated routinely, where we work, the advisory group would work directly with Grand Managers to understand what is routine maintenance, and then work with the finance committee on what excess in cash flows and things of that nature are, to start lining up projects of when things can get done, and providing those recommendations for the board so that you have something that you can stand on, saying this recommendation coming from this group is supported by however many homeowners that have provided feedback directly to that group, as well as there's cross currents between committees already in existence that are providing into it as well. So, I don't see this as, hey, we're going to get it done in 90 days and we're good. No, this is something that should live on from board election to board election, and changes as either the homeowner perspective changes or wants or needs, or if a hurricane comes in and knocks something down, then that's going to destroy whatever master plan's in place, and priorities are going to adjust. So yeah, I think monthly might be too quick, because you're not going to get feedback that quickly to provide any information back to the board. But on a quarterly basis, as it first gets stood up, then there could be tweaks along the way from quarter to quarter.
Yeah, that's the other thing about the way master plans have been done in the past. They've been done, and they've been done for 5 years, and they haven't been revised during that time. I think most of us, if not all of us, envision what you had suggested, which is it being updated on a regular basis as needed, and probably with at least every sort of a thing that we put in there. So
There was a time where, as the board was working through the budget, that they were doing a master plan exercise as well years ago. But then that fell off the face of the earth, as everything else did. My only, if we're going to stick with our do it once and do it right philosophy, I don't see this getting done before the budget at all. So assuming that this is just thinking ahead, assuming that there may be some low-hanging fruit in whatever they come up with a strategic plan, like the one included putting grills over at one of the parks in East Village and stuff like that. Just a thought, do we want to put some funds in the budget for those kinds of things, knowing that the 81 building is going to be a big ticket item, and so is the soccer field?
I think those are great questions. I don't think we are the only ones to answer that.
Yeah.
I think that's
I think too,
something that we can all.
I think the,
Well, they're not, well, but, okay.
the only budget implication.
We have to approve it still.
I know, I'm talking about
Yeah.
budget. No, I'm talking about what effect this will have on the budget.
Oh, yeah, we do
This-
have,
This
there,
process is not going to be done by the time we have to put the budget numbers.
right,
together.
yeah, no, we're gonna have to
So
look at stuff in
thinking
the budget,
ahead,
but
we
hopefully,
want to put a pocket of money in there
Yeah, we're,
in anticipation of that, just throwing it out there.
I think we're gonna have to really, the more we talk about this, we're gonna really have to sit down and look at the dependencies too. We don't know what we haven't really talked about 851, like, is that gonna be a task force? There's gonna be a lot of other connections with finance and with 851, and honestly with our key partners. And that was honestly the reason why I thought the key partner exercise would be so beneficial, is because we do need to look, as we start thinking about the composition, we need to have the right people at the table too, from a partner perspective. So, obviously CDD is doing their own thing right now too, from a community center perspective. I think they're looking at they're having certain discussions too. I thought they're having a discussion.
no, I think,
They're having a workshop.
Yep.
So I think we have to get in sync. That's a different discussion, but I think we need to also think about that. So the composition, partners, the time horizon, I agree with you. I think that right now, again, we need to figure out this, and then we need to figure out the path, how this runs with the master planning committee or task force or whatever. So there's a lot more. And again, it's not just like figuring out, did you get people in the room to give us feedback on X, Y, Z? There's a lot more at a high level we need to figure out, I think, right now. And I want to make sure we're thinking about all this before we just like write this thing, solicit applications and move on.
Yeah, in terms of the budgeting, a number of things that we would do would come out of capital funds. So it's not as much.
Well, yeah, but we also have the 851 building.
Well, no, I know. I just think we need to bring the same
approach that we're talking about that we haven't delineated yet to the budget this year, right? And not just try to do specific things. And I think the finance committee has done a great job with that, looking through, seeing what the numbers are overall, diving into the numbers that didn't look the way that they thought they should. And so, I haven't been as involved in the finance committee in the past, but I did go last year. I think because we're doing bottom up, I think the finance committee is even more valuable this year in doing that hard work of digging down into those numbers.
Well, but like I said, my only concern is without knowing, and we'll probably have a good idea by, well, maybe not. I'd hate, say there's $50,000 worth of something that is considered low hanging fruit. And I would hate that we could do next year if we had the money, but because we don't know how much these big projects are gonna cost, we can't do anything because it's not in the budget. And then we're right back where we started, where we have this great master plan and, it gets pushed aside and
Well, I don't think it needs to be pushed aside. I agree that we may have to pay for this with a pause on spending on amenities and a pause in spending on this. But I think it's worth our investment. And that was the point that both Charles and Jared have been making, is that's what's the most important thing. I mean, it'd be nice if we could like spin up the kiddie pool, change that, it'd be nice if we could do some things. That would be nice. But I don't want to push those forward and risk the power. And
I don't think she's talking about that.
No.
She's just saying money,
Money.
cash, so that when because it's gonna take 6.5 months to do this.
Yep.
At that point, the budget's done. We have a budgeted for anything. So I think she's saying, now they say, do a $10,000 thing and a $12,000 thing here. We're like, oh, well, we didn't budget set that. So now it needs to be 2025.
Well, but some of those will come from reserves and some of those will come from capital. I don't know what would come from operating, but
I think we need to be mindful, and I think let's look at the field. So the field was a perfect example. There's just, as BAU, we're just gonna have to fix things as we go. I think we're gonna have to be careful as we start going through these discussions that we don't start talking about artificial turf, right? We don't want to start going down the paths of these wholesale enhancements necessarily. We need to like fix and maintain and work on that. That should be our focus right now when kind of the day to day. We have to be careful to not solve necessarily and empower that group to let them figure out what that future state is going to look like.
Yeah.
What worries me, and even with the, I don't want to like belabor that, but if we start going down the artificial turf path, we're going to do a lot of the work that they've been, hopefully we're going to charge them to do. And then, we don't want to start depleting capital and doing all that. And we're not, we need to get this group in flight, get them mobilized and figure out the time frame. And again, be mindful of what we're doing just in our day to day.
Celia and Jim, remind me, it's my recollection that one person wrote the mission statement for the town hall advisory, right? I mean, I don't remember having any input as to what.
I'm not the best person to remember. I may have given him input, but I'm sure that it was a unilateral decision, which I was against.
We didn't even know about it.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
So where does the mission statement come from? Does that come from us? Okay.
Yeah, it does come from us.
So how do you want to go about doing that?
We need to define master plan. We need to acknowledge the parameters where they can and can't go. I think we don't want them to reinvent the wheel. I'm just spitballing, and we'll need to like kind of distill this down into like an actual mission statement. We're not going to give them budget to do more studies, right? The data is there, the information is there. We want them to operationalize this information, put together the strategy, engage the community. Again, I think we need to figure out resources. We need to figure, who's going to be the management liaison. How much time is this going to take?
Or do we have
I see the laughing here, but that's a serious question.
Or do we have a management liaison?
Well, that's a great question. So, but can we, how much, I know we haven't gotten anywhere with this, but I mean, this is going to take time out of your day. So can we maybe throw it to them for a second?
I'm going to vote for Lauren. I don't think you need a management liaison.
Well,
I think you look at management, you look at the board, you look at stakeholders, like your key partner discussion. I think you look at those groups as stakeholder interviews. So you gather them groups together, even your committee chairs, you gather them together in a group. They're all committee members. So there's standardized questions that you can formulate that they would all have an answer to. Same with your management team, same with the board members. So you're getting the feedback, but it's not.
That's kind of what Eileen described, right?
Yeah,
What you mean,
it's essentially, it's a very bare bones community needs assessment, and you're reaching out to stakeholders that don't necessarily have day-to-day involvement, but may have some touch points with you. Like CDD is a good one to talk about when you're discussing a master plan. How could they be a partner with you? Same with CROA, CJC. Lexington is a big part of the downtown, things like that.
Jared, do you want, because you've done some work on this already, do you want to, maybe you and Charles, or maybe just you, or maybe just Charles, or
I'll
whatever?
take a stab at
You
writing
want to take a
it.
stab at it?
I'll take a stab at writing it, and then we can,
And then share
present
it.
it. Well, and I think we want to present it publicly.
Of course.
And what I would also commit, we need to make a commitment here on camera live, is that the selection process, there's not going to be any executive sessions. There's not going to be any of that. This is going to be done through a fair process, through an objective process. Everyone's going to get a fair chance to join the committee, and the selections will be made public. There's not going to be decisions made behind closed doors like it was with the Celebration Hall task force and all those other things. This is going to be a fair and transparent process. So that's the commitment I think we all need to make right now.
I think we need to have this done so that we can announce the mission and then start the accepting applications by the next board meeting. We can't go on forever and ever. It's got to be this. I know, but.
Well, but if you can just throw some ideas out there, send them to me, and then I can start working like on the form that we would send out, like we're looking for someone who fits this category, like you were saying, the 5 things, we need somebody like this, and then kind of describe, with financial background, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
We need somebody construction, blah, 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 blah.
I can get you those. He can work on the mission statement.
All right.
I know that's saying a lot, but it's 2 weeks. The next option is that we're not discussing this till August.
I know, but we're in budget,
Gotta
we're
stop doing
851. That's my only concern is like
We're not in 851. We haven't done anything on 851 for 3 months.
I know, but it's going to pick up, I assume, pretty quickly once we start getting.
Well, we shouldn't. We should let this master plan dictate that.
But
We
we
shouldn't
also,
be doing anything in 851 that's not life safety.
but we need to know what, to the degree that 850, don't we need to at least get some,
I would think so.
I mean, I don't,
Like what? What are you, I mean, what are you talking about?
How
Other
much we
other
get
than
for-
a final decision?
Well, I'm thinking the resources we're going to take either from management and the calls that we're going to need from the community. I'm just trying to think like, I don't know.
Well, like, we'll need to rent space, but we don't know whether that's renting space for the repair period or whether it's a building period. We don't have any of those answers yet.
I know, but that's going to bleed into the master plan also.
How do
Like,
we have a
Well,
master
of course it
plan
will
if
be.
we don't even know what's happening with this building?
Well, that's part of the master plan is deciding would happen to this building and to get feedback where people are at with information that we give them.
we haven't had a master plan in years. So I mean, that's my only other thing. Like we just like to see the soccer fields or whatever, like there haven't been lights for 6 months. We haven't had a master plan. So we need to get this done right. I don't want to fall back into the go fast and fix stuff like that. That methodology is going. I don't.
So then how long do you think we should wait until we actually start this?
It needs to
Maybe
be done
after we're
right.
done with the budget.
Not in the year. I mean,
But I think this first initial piece, I think it can be done in 2 weeks.
I agree.
So then we can get the thing out and then we take 30 days
It's gonna
to
take,
get.
yeah, it's gonna take 30 days
Yeah,
to
to
even
get
have
the-
people apply.
Absolutely. And in the meantime, we're doing.
I just don't want us to push this to August and then we're doing 30 days. Now it's end of September.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I would rather inform the budget process more than less. And so obviously, the more time we and the finance committee have to look at it and
Yeah.
think about how that may or may not impact anything that we've
That will decide if they're.
preliminarily
put in
decided on.
A little bit at the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
That
Then we can.
kind of inform your capital allocation.
Yes.
And also reserves, do we need more money in reserves for certain items?
Right.
Okay.
I'll help with the mission too. I mean, I'm not trying to put that all on you.
No. I think we need to.
Yeah.
So who's writing the applicant? Like, how are we establishing the application, like for the call for candidates? Or
Well,
is that we're gonna?
I think
Well,
this needs to come together
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
And then the next
well,
step.
and he said that he could describe the kind of people that we're looking for in each
Yeah.
category. And then if you apply for this category, do you want a resume to go along with it?
Right.
Well, I think we do because those
Good.
5 are going to be expertise based,
Mhm.
right? Have we agreed on that? I'm not sure if we have.
I think so. You guys think? What do you think, Bill? You've been kind of quiet.
I missed the last part, that they would be experts.
Expertise based?
Yeah, we need subject matter experts at the very least.
Right, so we
When
want
you're talking about
resumes.
this thing, you need somebody that understands that there are issues associated with the conservation lands on our, on this side now.
Exactly.
That we can only build in certain directions, and that applies to a lot of places. DCC has restrictions for future use of certain property. You need somebody to know those questions, ask those questions correctly. And certainly, as Jared said, we need somebody that understands finance and where this is going to impact, not just today, but next year and the year after, because all these things are going to have operating costs.
With that, so do you want to spearhead, full term,
Yeah.
the mission statement itself?
Yep.
And then you work on the application and the qualities of the people that we're looking for.
Mhm.
And then at some point, touch base to make sure that you're kind of in sync,
Yep.
and then maybe have something for us to look at again at the next meeting?
Yeah.
Just to,
And these applicants will be owners.
Yes.
okay, thanks, guys. Okay. So we have 10 more minutes. Anybody? We're gonna leave Charles exercise for the next meeting. 'Cause I'm sure he can't do it in 8 minutes.
Nope.
Anybody have anything for the good of the cause?
I would say with the key partner exercise, as we think about where that's gonna live in workshop or meeting or whatever. What I had in mind is we would sit down and figure out, all right, we've got Lex and we've got CDD, we've got PCC, we've got the alphabet soup. So as we work through the master plan and start thinking about the master plan, how critical are these partners to us to help us realize our end goal? I also think there's value for Lauren, just in day-to-day and as we work through this, where does she need to spend her time in cultivating these relationships just on a day-to-day basis? So I think master plan, day-to-day, just really thinking about everyone that we interact with, CROA's perspective, again, CDD Foundation, and Mattamy. And Mattamy's a really important one, really, really important, especially for the master plan. We're starting 2A and 2B. Or whatever. So I think that's, again, really, really critical for the master plan and stuff. So, and I think we need to incorporate that into the mission as well, just that, you know, we need to, the stakeholder or the interviews.
I think it's okay to, even though we haven't discussed that, I think it's okay to do that with what you're writing.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, we can infer that, you know.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
I have not.
Well, I'm just tickled pink. I think this was a good discussion. I'm glad that we had so many people participate. Look forward
Hey
to
Cindy,
of
one
this.
more thing before you wrap up.
Sure.
Yeah, I was thinking for the advisory group and the focus or scope would really be, they would only be focused on what should the community's use of the capital improvement fund and potentially replacement fund be, that it shouldn't impact any operational at all. And that's where you can look at the bigger projects like 851 or community center, things of that nature, but then at the same time on the replacement side, look at grills and things of that nature you're discussing. And maybe the first scope of this advisory group is, yes, start doing the master plan, but focus on 851 and what does the community want to do with that building?
How would you staff a community center from an operating fund perspective? I'm gonna, Andrew,
Say that again?
staffing for a community center operating fund. You were talking about focusing on just capital. I'm saying there are implications we need to think about across the board.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, I'm saying more for your budget conversation this year that you guys need to resolve in 6 months. That,
Yeah,
you know,
it's
yeah, long term, there definitely will be operational costs with whatever amenity we put in place, and that should definitely be fully aware and vetted and understood. But I'm just saying for your budget conversations this year, yeah, that they're beyond the soccer fields right now, there's not really any major improvement going on.
And
But
I think we all here agreed that we don't want to dictate that. We want the advisory group to do that rather than us saying, you need to focus on this. They will decide what the focus is based on community feedback, rather than that being a directive of the board.
Yeah.
And then we'll tell them if they're right or wrong. That was a joke. That was a joke. I'm happy to listen to the community. Anybody else? Lauren? Roger? Natalie? Anybody? Okay.
I move to adjourn.
Jim moves to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Charles. All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, folks. See you in 2 weeks.
Thank you.